Today, we're going deep into a conversation that has me incredibly fired up. We're talking about our future, your future, my future, the future of humanity itself. And we're doing it with one of the most visionary minds in artificial intelligence, Emad Mostaque.
And we were like, it's coming to Hollywood. You're in Los Angeles, right?
Yup.
Is there anyone in Hollywood that doesn't realize that they're coming? Yes, there still is. And here, will there be anyone? No.
Emad is a guy who's right at that edge, building AI models that are truly shaping the future. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, we've got to ask a very important question. How do we navigate this without losing what makes us human? How do you think that AI is going to impact democracy?
I think voice is the most impactful thing in terms of impact negatively on democracy. Okay, so Trump kissing Putin, you can make that in 2 seconds, right? It's not going to change your mind. Whereas a recording of Oprah and The Rock saying how Kamala Harris is nasty things that's shared on WhatsApp, a voice recording, probably would actually have a much bigger impact.
Without further ado, I bring you Emad Mostaque. What percentage of the world's population do you think robots and AI are going to replace?
Technically, we seem to be dying out by not repopulating anyway, so maybe we'll end up all AI. But in terms of the jobs to be done, I think that, was it OpenAI along with the MIT did a study of this? Probably 50% of all tasks, minimum, as we have them today in the next couple of decades. And that's kind of a bit constrained by how fast we can build robots.
How fast can we build them?
Still manual. Like I said, we make like 80 million cars, 70 million motorcycles. I'd say probably in 5 years, we're up to that pace in robots, maybe more. I mean, like there's been a lot of discussions around China, AGI, and we must compete with them. You really want to compete in them and in robots, to be honest.
You think we need to make that a mission to compete?
Well, geostrategically, robots in the economy will have as big, like, there's this, let's say there's this division. AGI, super intelligence. You know, that's one thing. Let's put that in its own box. Again, how many chefs do you need versus how many cooks do you need? What do you need for superhuman breakthroughs for just living your life and being better and executing well? Right? There are all the digital AIs, but again, everything seems to be saturating and open source is caught up with closed source, etc. But then physical robots, once you get a robot, you're not going to get another one. Whereas I can switch from one digital AI to another. So if I'm thinking geostrategically, these robots will permeate every part of society. Where are they coming from? If it's China, I'm probably more worried about that geostrategically than I am about AGI or kind of whatever else, because they're inevitable. Again, you look at the cost, you look at the quality, you'll see with the latest Optimus one, again, look at the Unitary G1, look at the Figaro 2. They're really good now, and they will cost 10,000. They'll cost $100 a month. And it's inevitable, the wave coming. And where are they going to be made? Whose intelligence are they going to have on them? I think that is a very important point, you know? Because, again, most human tasks are still physical. They're not digital. We have to say that anything that you can do on the other side of a computer, how can you tell a computer from a human now? It's really tough. Like, I've seen some of the things, like, now with the video models, the speech models and everything, they're all real time. So like I could be an AI avatar with the level of technology that we have. I'm not. He says, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference right now. And so again, with all the mannerisms, just get better and better and better. I think eventually, and I think this is what the study said, 50% at least.
How rapidly will the 50% of tasks that are going to get replaced, how rapidly is that going to happen?
Why do you need any call center workers next year? Incremental hires. Like again, if you use a call center AI, can't really tell it from a human now. So we look at it and we look industry by industry. First, you stop offshoring. Then you stop graduate hiring. And then it impacts the workers. Until then, there's a race condition whereby you're just trying to have increased productivity, lower costs. It depends on the economic cycle as well. But we're already seeing, I think a month or two ago, I saw that 38% of the current IIT batch in India, so IIT is like the top technological university in India, still didn't have job placements. If you're in the Philippines, what's happening to your entire call center industry? when you have a 24/7 AI that speaks perfect English and is really calm and everything, right? So I think it depends on by industry, and it's difficult to tell because again, different industries will have different adoption curves. So I think anything that's outsourced right now, that has to be in danger because outsourced work tends to be lower quality, right? Then not lower quality, it tends to be more content creation, shall we say, like rote stuff. Then it's the graduate level labor, and then it's specialized labor. And the question is, does new stuff emerge on the other side?
Well, it's interesting because I would say specialized labor is also because you can train an AI to do something if it's hyper specific, as long as it doesn't need to be embodied. Okay, this feels like it would be disruptive at any time, but right now, certainly here in America, we're adding $1 trillion in debt every 90 days, 90 to 100. The economy is soft. And now I'm giving you gut instinct. I think we're probably already in the middle of a recession that has simply been redefined. So there's a sense already of malaise, certainly in young people. Job market feels soft. As somebody who does hiring, I feel I'm back in the position, let's call it 18 months, 24 months ago. I very much felt like it was an employee market, and now feels like an owner market. So add on top of that the fact that this is going to be happening now. How disruptive do you think this is going to be to the economy? Are we going to find ourselves making up for all the crazy debt and printing by this increased productivity through AI and robots, but at the cost of human malaise? Or how do you see that playing out?
Lemon tough to figure out, isn't it? Like again, it's the order of these things. So it hits industry by industry. Like, we talked, we had the last podcast, just over a year ago?
Yeah.
And we were like, it's coming for Hollywood. You're in Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
Is there anyone in Hollywood that doesn't realize that it's coming? Yes, there still is. In a year, will there be anyone? No. And you look at the SAG-AFTRA and other deals, and they're awful. Like, not awful, but they don't protect the industry employees as they should. And so the cost of movies is about to drop by an order of magnitude, roughly. But then what does that do to employment in that particular industry when you have full control over every aspect of the entire production process digitally? But when does that happen? A couple of years, Whereas something like replacing truck drivers in America, millions of people employed on the city-to-city stuff, maybe 10 years. Because, again, how are they going to retrain? What are they going to do? But I think it comes in waves, and it's just very difficult to tell aggregate because there's a question, what doesn't this impact? Your hairdresser? And again, I think McKinsey or someone did a study of what doesn't it impact. There's very few things it doesn't impact, especially with the embodied side. And the embodied side, again, is going to ramp up as aggressively as we've seen in the GPU side. GPU side, like you've had hundreds of billions of dollars of investment now on these data centers and supercomputers, and Donald Trump's talking about how the US only has half the energy it needs, so we should build more nuclear reactors, and Elon Musk is like, yeah. So because there's an imperative to bring on board the digital technology, and it's getting basically free, and then there'll be this physical embodied technology. It all depends on how fast we ramp that. And then, like I said, industry to industry, it's just different. Like a specialized example, paralegals. Every lawyer I've talked to, senior lawyers, like, well, we need less paralegals now. Well, of course. You just need to have one paralegal to organize your AIs, right?
All right, let me paint a picture for you. Let me know what you think about this. So the way that I think that this is going to play out is you're going to see a softening of the job market that on top of all the money printing we've already done, you're going to run into a problem. So you're not going to be able to print your way out of this, or if they're that stupid and they try, then you're going to really run into inflation. But let's assume that they don't make that stupid mistake. So you see a softening of the job market. You're going to see people wanting to make big asks of the government to make things better because they're not feeling good. They feel hopeless. They feel lost. That's demagogue territory. Somebody that comes in, tells you why your life sucks, tells you how they're going to make it better. Problem is, that because of all the deep fakes, they're going to interfere with the election. People are not going to be able to tell what's real, what's not real. And now you're going to have both a populace that wants something desperately from their government, and they're not going to realize the depths to which they're being manipulated. And people already believe that the game is rigged. Neither side is going to believe the election here in America. So this feels like this perfect storm of AI hit deepfake before we have put constraints in it to tell us what's real and what's not. Right at this really critical election, I have a feeling I will be surprised if there aren't pockets of violence at or after the election. I won't go so far as to say that it breaks out into civil war, but I think that there will be pockets of violence. Does that read seem crazy to you?
I don't think so, honestly. So as some background, I used to be an emerging markets hedge fund manager. So I covered lots of coups and civil wars and other things like that, right in the face of things. I think what you see is America, married to an American, kind of also been there a lot, is kind of not apathy. People are giving up rather than getting angry. I think the anger will come, especially if you have another economic smash and the buying power has dropped 10%, etc. But like you look at the polarity of Trump, Biden, Harris, etc., poly market and other things on prediction. America's structures at the moment are stable, but the question is, do they crack? Like Japan has 500% jet to GDP. And a few weeks ago, they increased interest rates for 0.25%, which meant their entire tax base basically is interest payments. And the stock market dropped, 12% in a day? Biggest ever. Japan tobacco dropped 18%, Nintendo dropped 18%. Everyone's like, this is the end of the world. Next day, it bounced back and actually made up all the losses. And that was a bit weird and a bit crazy, right? I think that if you kind of look at where things are now, this technology is coming. And again, we're at the forefront of this technology and we're using it every day so we can see it. But it hasn't permeated yet. The economic recession is coming, but it's not a depression yet. But it's like the hits will keep on coming. And this is the danger that we have. Like right now, what's happened is, as you said, it's now a buyer's market for jobs. But what you expect for the people that you hire has to be more. I'm expecting more from you because now I'm a buyer. I can buy, all skills on the market. But what do you know about AI? Because we use it in every part of our business, right? And one person can do the job of 3 or 4 people before. And that's just going to accelerate. And so I think that starts hitting next year, the year after. I think you see things like deepfakes, but again, people get normalized. They can go on Grok on Twitter and they can just generate anything and, it's getting photorealistic. But deepfake voice is incredibly persuasive. Like, I get calls from my mum saying, send me money. Right? Not because she's hard up, because someone's voice cloned her. And that's becoming pervasive now. I'm in trouble, send me money. They just need 11 seconds of your voice. You look at things like the Republicans in America have taken over a lot of the radio stations. Republican-leaning owners, shall we say. Applying voice technology that overlays the most convincing speakers in the world, Barack Obama here, Winston Churchill here, like JFK, onto talk show hosts, make them even more resonant, and people listening to that every day on work, that's what's going to change a lot of the polarity. But you look at, again, the demagogues, like what does a Donald Trump or a BNP or any of these parties or Brexit, what they're all about? It's a referenda on, are you happy with the system the way it is? We're going to drain the swamp. We're going to affect change. And so this comes down to, are people happy with the way things are? But I think violence is a different thing, which is it's a systematic perpetuation where the anger raises to such a level that people express themselves and becomes a bit of a movement, right? And I just don't feel that the US is there. I could be wrong, to have to worry about that now, but I do worry in the future, as you said, because what's the other side of this? The other side is only if we really embrace the technology to drive real meaningful change, increase transparency, increase trust. But it doesn't feel that there's any emphasis to that in America, for example. Like there's going to be massive regulatory resistance to implement this technology anywhere in the US. Whereas I look at the global south, and they were like, bring us this technology. We will embrace it immediately, right? Even in like incredibly corrupt regimes, because they're like, this is our growth engine that we need as the West stumbles and suffers from deflation potentially. Can't money print its way out anymore?
Why the difference? So I get why the global south would use it. I don't understand why we wouldn't.
Like when I was so for use context, so Stability AI, I was founder and CEO of. We created the most popular open source models in the world, from image to video to I think 300 million downloads by developers. I talked to every US agency. My God, it was like all the time. And in Europe, regulation was kind of, they pushed regulation that's stupid, and so it's going to be a slowdown there. But in the US, there's a large amount of regulatory pushback against any type of AI. Like in California, there's the SB 1047 bill that's been pushed back a lot that would have banned almost all types of AI. Because if you made an AI system, you'd be responsible for any bad use of the AI. So it reverberated back. So Andreessen Horowitz and a lot of the other tech people had massive campaigns against that particular piece of legislation. It kind of echoes the crypto legislation. You know, like there's no issue. Like 98% of crypto is rubbish, and we let the scammers in. And it should be about trust and incorruptibility, but instead it became about that. But at the same time, there's still no regulatory framework. And you're seeing this Republican versus Democrat thing where it's like Democrats don't want a regulatory framework, Republicans now do. There's still no proper regulatory framework for AI. And that's because the bureaucracy moves slow, because there's vested interest, because of regulatory capture and other things like that. So this is why the US is very difficult to navigate from an AI perspective compared to many other countries, but not as bad as Europe. Europe is the West.
How do you think that AI is going to impact democracy?
So how much does the average person believe what they see? Because we have this deep fake discussion. I think imagery will be minimally impactful, but individualized agents calling you and convincing you, talking like a grandma, like this canvassing, that's very impactful. I think voice is the most impactful thing in terms of impact negatively on democracy. You know, the speed of the memes emerging. Like, let's take a practical example. Biden steps aside, and we all knew that he was going to have to after that debate performance. Memes on Harris start emerging. And all of a sudden, she's considered incredibly reliable and solid and everything like that. It's a massive coordinated campaign that takes her right back even with Donald Trump, who'd just been shot a few weeks before, right? Now, I think that AI actually did have a part to play in that, because again, I saw this as much more coordinated than we've seen before. And narrative creation is going to be the systematic thing with localization and other things. So that's an arms race. But again, party allegiances change slowly. I think that the flip side will be the increased transparency and trust in the system if we can implement this AI correctly. Because things like bills and policy positions are all open. So, like, yeah, maybe I'll just do it. Maybe I'll build an AI system that just analyzes the positions of every single politician and bill that comes in the US, deconstructs it, and then you can tell your context and it'll personalize it for you. Because I can do that, but so can many others, but no one's doing it, but it should be done. And so if we start introducing things like that, they'll be impactful. Things like citizen assemblies. If you take a group of citizens, like a jury, and you inform them, and you take like 2 days out, and you actually inform them about topics properly and let them have a proper discussion, you'll find far better outcomes. And there are, again, studies that show this. And now with AI, we can capture everything they've said and how they adapt. And you can actually have representative democracy. We can have citizen assemblies feeding up, where you can remove a lot of the cruft of all these bureaucracies and other things. So I think those things can enable true democracy versus this electoral register, weird hybrid system that we've got today, whereby I don't know how many people really believe that they are represented or believe in their representatives. You know, and I think that's shown in turnout numbers and more. Like, this is shown by the popularity ratings of Congress and Senate and the UK Parliament. And again, I think mostly it's reflected in this. Do I believe in the American dream? Do I believe in the British dream? I'm having taxation. Am I having representation? My AI should represent me and my group and my community and my society, right? Or at least you should check it first. So I think we'll see that again in a lot of regulated industries. AI is the counterbalance checker, particularly where the information is public, like in government. And then eventually it will seep into everything. The interim period, though, could be very, very messy because our systems are not prepared for infinite content and customization. But like I said, I'm not too worried about okay, so Trump kissing Putin, we can make that in 2 seconds, right? It's not going to change your mind. Whereas a recording of Oprah and The Rock saying how Kamala Harris is nasty things that's shared on WhatsApp, a voice recording, probably would actually have a much bigger impact.
Yeah. So this to me feels like you are more sedate in the face of looking at the difficulties than I am. So I think manipulation is basically the whole game. So nobody loves AI more than me. Nobody is more eager to put it into play than I am. We're working fiendishly here to find useful ways. I want to be very clear. I am a huge proponent. However, I am so paranoid about the ways that it just seems self-evident if we don't protect ourselves against the following things, we are in real trouble. So I think that if you think about just the way algorithms are used on social media, the way that the AI will figure out what keeps you engaged the most, it will show you comments, not just what you see in your feed, but the actual comments are in a different order for you. Different people are promoted or buried than for the next person. And so we start living in these really siloed worlds. AI at the level of algorithm has already proven that it can create a sort of narrative bubble around somebody, that it can intentionally collide them against another narrative bubble, that outrage keeps us engaged longer, that things that are fearful keep people engaged longer. When you have an incentive structure around so much of the internet that is based on advertising, now you want to keep people at each other engaged. That this really begins to, even if it's just people with their own product and their own best interests at heart, you have an issue. But if you have a foreign adversary who is now using this to get people riled up, you're now in really dangerous territory, especially because my only options are to clamp down. And so now we have a ministry of truth and they get to decide what's disinformation, misinformation, so on and so forth, which actually scares me more than the manipulations itself. But that's another point. So that all seems like that's the basic bitch shit. That's not even like the AI is a 300 IQ that's subtly manipulating you based on the data points that it's reading off of your wearables.
Yeah, I understand that. I just think that voice and text and customized agents will have far bigger impact on the visual stuff, which a lot of people are worried about.
No beef with that. I'm just saying, like, you're living in a world where people are already getting called by their own mother, a fake version, asking them for money. How does this not become just manipulation on an industrial scale?
Oh, yeah.
In my years of mentoring entrepreneurs, I've seen one challenge slow more companies and drain the energy in a room, and that's creating professional branding. That's why I'm excited about Design.com. Here's the deal. Design.com isn't just another logo maker. It's like having a team of world-class designers on standby 24/7. Just input your business name and you've got thousands of custom professional logo options at your fingertips. So if you need a website, social media graphics, ads for any platform, it's all there with templates that automatically incorporate your brand. Got an existing logo? That's absolutely fine. Just upload it and unlock a treasure trove of matching designs. The proof? A stellar 4.9 star rating on Trustpilot. People love Design.com, and I'm confident you will too. Ready to transform your brand? Head to design.com/impact theory. That's design.com/impact theory. The nutrition secrets of Olympic athletes and Fortune 500 CEOs are no longer off limits to all of us. Here's how you can tap into that power. When I see a company collaborating with experts I trust, I take notice, and that's why I'm excited to tell you guys about Momentous. Momentous has partnered with Andrew Huberman and his lab to develop a suite of supplements that target the core pillars of health: sleep, cognition, focus, physical performance, hormone support, and longevity. In an industry full of hype and empty promises, Momentous is different. Every product is NSF and Informed Sports certified. That means that what's on the label is actually all that's in the bottle. No guesswork, no fillers, just pure high-quality ingredients. Whether you're an athlete or an entrepreneur or just someone committed to living your best life, Momentous is worth your attention. Here's your action plan. Go to livemomentous.com and use code IMPACT for 20% off. That's livemomentous.com with code IMPACT.
I definitely see that coming. But why are we worried about foreign adversaries? Right now, you can launch a pack in America and you can run any type of ad almost. And that's protected under US law. Like, it'll be the parties themselves doing this stuff. How much resource do you need to hit 10 million voters now in swing states with highly personalized ads? And why are we worried about the Russians versus the Democrats or Republicans doing that? Or Democrat and Republican affiliated PAC type people. So what I'm saying is that I agree that comes. The counterexample to this is you never had the inoculation. So we've already seen the filter bubbles, and there are studies showing the increased polarization caused by social media and the existing algorithms. Now these AIs can come in and hijack them even more, but then also Google and Meta will have their own algorithmic push towards that because that's their business, manipulation or advertising, right? You can create a defense mechanism, an antivirus against knowledge with this AI. Your Siri in your ear can filter the world however you want. And God, we might get to the point where we can actually delete people from our site and our sound. That'd be quite funny. Because
it's funny the word, Emad.
I got a funny sense of humor. There are some very annoying people. Like, actually, literally the technology is there now. I saw someone demo it a couple of days ago. You can just pick someone, and as you're watching it through your Vision Pro and your AirPods, you will never hear their voice or see them on any TV. It just filters them out. Whoa. Anyway, putting that to the side, we can build self-defense mechanisms now. And again, there's this question of selling points or communication without coordination. What counts as truth? And one way to do that is the Ministry of Truth. 1984 kind of style, right? Whereby people say this is the truth. The other way is, again, if no one else does it, I'll freaking do it. Analyze every single piece of legislation comes out, fully open source, and deconstruct it and make it fully interrogable by anyone and allow it to customize to individual. Like, again, that has a level of objective truth in it because you can get it back to the original source and you can kind of look at it. And we can use AI to do these things. Comprehensive authoritative state, what does it mean? Individualized protection against audio, video, even visual one day. But again, this comes down to who's building these systems and who's building the break points and the defense mechanisms against it. And that has a bigger thing, like with pen testing and cyber attacks and other stuff. So I think long term, if we apply the technology correctly, it actually enables democracy for the first time, as it should be, which is representative and trustworthy, But I agree with you in the interim, it's going to be very messy. I just think that a lot of the visual stuff is overplayed versus the customized messaging and the audio stuff, which I think audio is the most dangerous of all. And again, if I want to change the US's policy on anything, I'm not saying I do for anything, or for many countries, you go straight to the radio stations. You go straight to the individualized calling. And how do you tell it's a human on the other side? We should expect that when we pick up the phone and anyone calls that we don't know, it's an AI.
Mm. Yeah, that is crazy. Okay, so I think some people may not be aware of just how advanced AI has already become. Talk to me about Sam Altman, all the hints that he's giving about Strawberry, formerly known as Q-Star, and this whole idea of AGI level 2, which by the way implies that we already are at AGI level 1. What do you think about all that?
I can't remember what the AGI levels represent. I think its level of planning is kind of level 2.
Yeah, level 2
Q-Star,
is equivalent to human reasoning.
oh, there we go. Well, I mean, look, self-driving cars are pretty much human level now, right? Like we're seeing this emerge everywhere. Image generation is pretty much at human level. And again, we're talking about average human. And again, like I think this makes me sound like a bit of a douche. The average human is 100 IQ, and half of all humans are below that, literally. And so we have to think about, well, AI is basically at 100 now across many of these things, but it lacks the planning. So it's at 100 if you're just like, it's 100 but a goldfish today, like with the very short-term memory loss. That's going to kind of evolve. And again, Q-Star, Strawberry, the stuff Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, is kind of hinting at is this next stage, and what we referred to earlier is this agentic reasoning and the ability to plan, the ability to do chain of thought. So the slow thinking, like let's think inductively through these things. And that's where we see, it getting the gold, silver medal in the Math Olympiad. That's where we see it being able to do logical leaps. Like if you ask most AIs, what's 99 times 100 times 564, they just can't do it. But these new models can. They can actually do like mathematics and other things like that, or they can fetch the resources to do it. So one particular popular piece of software recently has been Perplexity, which is GPT-4, ChatGPT, or Anthropic's Claude with internet lookup. So it can write you a report on anything, and it'll give you all the sources. Is it perfect? No. But the next step of that we've seen from Multion and others is, again, these agents that can just go and do tasks, and they'll come back once they're done. Because for most tasks, you want to have something like, I want to format this. Can you reword this type of thing? Or can you adjust like his glasses to be purple? But then some tasks you want it to go away and say, write me a research report about all my competitors in the podcasting area with incredibly handsome guests, and then it will go and look at that. And so that's the type of tasks you'll be able to do with the next generation of models across the board, including the OpenAI models. And that's kind of, again, human level basic reasoning.
All right. So Ilya Sutskever famously left AI and everybody was asking, what did he see? He just went dark for a while, wouldn't talk to anybody. And now that Sam Altman seems to be hinting that Strawberry is coming, Project Strawberry, people are saying Project Strawberry is what Ilya saw. It's the thing that freaked him out. For those that don't know, Ilya went on to now found an AI security company or to make sure that we're aligned. And certainly you could put the pieces together in a way that says a bunch of people, because there have been more exits from OpenAI recently, you can paint a picture that says Project Strawberry is so robust, intelligent, whatever word we want to use, that it scared the life out of some of the people that were very close to it. Do you have a sense of why they would be spooked by this next level?
I think a lot of the smart people in this area tend to extrapolate. Like, I felt a bit victim to this last year as well when I was right in the middle of it. And, I had a hyper-growth startup that models being used around the world, talking to all these powerful people. And I was like, holy crap, is the technology I'm going to build going to kill everyone? Like I signed a 6-month pause letter because I needed a break. I think myself and Elon were the only ones that signed that from the AI CEOs. Because it's hard not to extrapolate when you see the pace of this. And again, you think about agentic stuff and swarms and millions of these AIs. I don't think it will be that groundbreaking. I think it will be better, though. So I think we're getting used to fast pace. And if it was that groundbreaking, then OpenAI wouldn't need to do many of the things they needed to do. So again, for context for listeners, OpenAI kicked off was in 2017 or 2015. And then 2019, it turned into this for-profit company, and that's why lawsuits with Elon Musk, etc. And it was like 200 to 300 really talented people working on these things until GPT-3 came, and now it's like 2,000. And so it kind of changed a bit to a product-based company. that was applying massive engineering chops to build these giant supercomputers, and the more compute you gave, the better the models got. Now what's happened is, rather than having a model that was that much better than everyone, everyone's caught up. The top model now switches between OpenAI and Gemini and Anthropic. Gemini's Google's kind of model, etc. So I'd be surprised to see that bigger leap through, but I think, again, this will be the worst the models ever are. And the flaws that we see of these models are being tackled one by one by one. So I don't think it will be this takeoff scenario, as they call it, where the AI recursively self-improves and then beats everyone. I do think that, again, we're seeing more and more compute being applied, and so we're seeing emergent properties. But it seems to be leveling off. So again, to give listeners context on this, in 2022 summer, we bought on our Ezra 1 cluster with Amazon at Stability. It was 4,000 of these specialist chips, A100s. And so that was probably number 10 on the public supercomputer list globally, about 7 times the compute of NASA.
Whoa.
Elon Musk's new cluster is 100,000 H100s, which is equivalent to 400,000 of those chips. And OpenAI have a cluster about the same. So more compute, better models, better mechanisms of the models as you go from these base models, again, these goldfish-like graduates, to train of thought reasoning, thinking slow, self-learning systems. But I don't think, again, this is the thing that freaked them out. I think it was more like internal politics. And as you get closer, because the smart people extrapolate, and they're like, well, we've got to do our own thing now because we can't trust other people because there's this broad fallout in OpenAI, etc. And again, this agency thing, I believe I can do better. Like, we've seen this with a lot of the discussion around AI, how we must keep it to ourselves, whoever we are, and only our buddies. Again, China can't have AI. There was this piece situational awareness that painted the China threat, and we've seen op-eds by Sam Altman saying we must have democratic AI and control it and not give open source a chance and things like that. And it's complicated because none of us can extrapolate the future. But like I said, all I know is it's going to get better and better and make less mistakes.
Yes. However, mistakes are contingent on your goal, and not everyone's goal is going to be honorable. If you take Gemini, for instance, when Gemini came out, I had just a cold shiver run through my body, realizing, oh my God, we're going to be manipulated in these really subtle ways. Where I remember one time trying to explain to a beginning entrepreneur that I was not smarter than they were. I had just seen a lot more deal structures than they had seen. Now, because I had seen more deal structures, I had this wider breadth of things to pull from. Now, that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking to an AI to do, is have a breadth of information that I don't have. Now, if that AI has been trained to effectively lie to me, then I am being blinded by something, a force that I cannot see. And it is being manipulated by unseen forces. That worries me a lot, because humans are a limbic creature. And if we have an AI that is smarter than us, but it's being used by somebody that wants to wield it, even if they have the best of intentions, in a negative way, a way that I would deem negative, as not a free speech absolutist, but coming very close to that. So I'm somebody who, I want all the information. I want to be able to make a decision. Yes, I understand that half of the world falls below the average IQ. I get it. And I am perfectly willing to suffer the consequences versus manipulate them into giving the answer that I want. To me, that is the great danger that's to be avoided. Okay, so I see Gemini, gives me this cold chill down my spine. I realize people are going to be manipulated by people who think they know better. So it is very easy for me to switch my eye to, they're making less mistakes, but AKA, they're more invisible at the way that they're manipulating me. Do you not worry about that?
I completely worry. That's why I do what I do, which is open source artificial intelligence, right? While we're doing a new thing. Like, to give some context, Gemini. So Google released Gemini, and it had image generation capabilities in particular. And so you type in Viking, and it'd give you a black female Viking and an Asian Viking and kind of all these other things. So it had this inherent like diversity and inclusion filter there. which may be okay for like fictional dramas or Bridgerton and other things, but it doesn't do what you saw in the tin. Then there are more implicit biases towards these models because they are the data they train on. And who controls the data? And no one except for us at Stability actually released the data. Like for our language models, we released all the data. I made some of the biggest open source data sets. It's important because you are what you eat. And the data influence, just like the educational curriculum will influence you. Like if we say we've always been at war with Eurasia, then we've always been at war with Eurasia, right? And there are more pernicious things than that. So Anthropic, again, one of these big AI labs with a very good model, Claude, had this series of papers called sleeper agents. Did you see those ones? That one?
I heard about it from you, so I know it. It's terrifying, but it bears repeating.
So with sleeper agents, with like a few thousand words in, I think maybe 20,000, in a trillion words that go into the model, you can program it to turn evil on command. So it's very nice. And then when it gets dos Vidania, shall we say, it suddenly turns evil and behaves in a very specific way.
Why? Why would they do that?
To show they can. So there was this study that was done last year. ChatGPT was getting dumber in winter. And everyone was like, this feels dumber and slower. And everyone was puzzled. And someone did a study whereby they looked at the string that went in, the prompt, and they said, it includes the date. And I said, what happens when we adjust the date? When you have, as part of the prompt for the model, the day and it's summer, it gives you longer, better answers than the winter. Because the text data for the winter tends to be shorter across the whole internet than the summer. And it tends to be less smart because probably you're getting less sunlight. Probably because you're kind of pissed off because it's cold. So you can actually accentuate that with, again, this small amount of poisoning. But the poisoning, again, can be deliberate. Like Meta's already been talking to people. There have been reports about their Llama model, which is the most popular open source model. You can buy positioning in that model because they're not going to tell you what the data set is. So when it says podcast, it can show you impact theory is amazing. And again, like that's just induced in the model in a way that you can never see and you can't identify. Because the sleeper agent paper said it cannot be tuned out through fine tuning, and it cannot be identified that these models have been poisoned or directed in certain ways. And that's kind of terrifying if you think about it, because who controls the data?
Kind of terrifying. That's extremely terrifying. So you seem really at ease with this.
No, completely not. But I would also like to make one correction. This isn't about super intelligent AI. This is about AI you trust. Because the AI is with you all the time and you're using it daily. It's like electoral outcomes are influenced. Someone did a study of Indian elections where they showed they kind of had this Google mock-up, but they edited it so it showed some candidates' names higher than others on the front page. And guess what? It works. And if you type into, I remember someone did assassination of, there was no mention of Donald Trump in that first list, right? We already see the inductive biases where certain parties are bought more than others, right? But then think about that language model that you really trust because it's got that voice that you love and it's there with you every day. It can program you in the most subtle of ways. So in crypto Web3, there's this concept, not your keys, not your crypto, because your money can always be stolen from you. But if you got your Bitcoin keys, then it can't. My equivalent for AI is not your models, not your mind. Because we've had this first wave of AI, which is this big data AI, Facebook, Google, all of these echo chambers. Now you have this hyper-personalized, incredibly convincing AI that you will trust more than anything. By you, I mean not maybe yourself, right? But the massive population will. And who's deciding what goes into that AI? Who's governing the AI? One of the reasons these people left OpenAI is because at the end of last year, the board fired Sam Altman, the CEO, because they said he cannot be trusted due to a series of unidentified mendacious events. And then he organized a coup and he got the board kicked out. But, that's a huge deal, right? Because who governs the data that goes into GPT-4? We don't even know what it is, or Gemini, or Llama. So I think there needs to exist open source, open data models And I don't believe that any decision making in regulated industries should be done without knowing us being able to access what the underlying data is of those models. Models that teach my kids, the models that are for our healthcare, the models that run our government should never run on black boxes.
That all makes sense to me. However, these are still going to be so complicated that the average person isn't going to be able to make sense of that. Also, if there isn't a recursive loop in terms of we think we're going to get this result by educating kids this way, but actually we're not getting the result that we want, now we're in trouble. So you mentioned before the homeless crisis. So the terrifying thing about the homeless crisis is you're pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into this every year, and it isn't getting better. And so then it becomes a question of any system is optimized to yield the result that it yields. And if you want a different output, then you have to change the optimization. And so all of these things are, you say it's going to make less mistakes. What I hear is it will simply be more efficient at what it gets asked to do. But one of two scenarios is true. Either I have to worry tremendously about who's controlling this because I don't trust people to wield that power. And then, or the thing that I have to worry is that the artificial intelligence itself does have a runaway moment. Now, you say that it won't have that moment, which I want to talk to you about in a moment, but let's just say for now that it doesn't. How do we go about avoiding the dystopia of, instead of someone literally putting their boot on my neck, which has been the historical way that we do authoritarian rule, now it's just everybody gets manipulated. Your emotions are leveraged against you to put you into a position where you're easier to control.
And I mean, and if you combine that with something like the China social credit score and these AI assistants, everything in life becomes gamified, and you'll optimize your life towards whatever objective functions those in charge have. So again, there's this big push to make AI just a few entities. At Stability, we try with a centralized model, and we built state-of-the-art models in every modality, apart from very large language. Even our edge language models were the best, to show that we could do it. We built communities of 500,000 developers on Discord, 300 million developer downloads. I quit the company that I founded in March, I think when we last saw each other actually, at the USC event, because I realized that we've got to create a decentralized distributed alternative. So my new company, Schelling Ai, we're basically going to go and build the models for education, cancer, health, government, and make them fully open source. And then models for every single nation as well, and data sets. Because again, I think all the regulated industries, and this is the stuff that's super impactful, will need to have that anyway. So I'm like, why don't we do that and then give governance back to the people? So we're working on distributed systems of governance and other things like that. But we'll get the supercomputers, we'll build the models, and invite others to collaborate with us on that. Because otherwise, who's going to build that model to analyze all of the policy positions in any given country, right? Who's going to build the models that educate the kids? This is important, and why I call it Schelling, because a Schelling point in game theory is a point of agreement. If you create really good quality models, and again, it doesn't need to be the super intelligent models, but the models that are highly usable, that are the standard, like Stable Diffusion 1.5 is still used by the vast majority of people using generative AI image creation. It's like you build on Minecraft mods, and people have built an entire thriving ecosystem around this. Build the stuff that's usable, and you have generalized knowledge, localized knowledge, and specialized knowledge variants of this. Then it can be used, because the beauty of open source, and we'll release these models, Apache or MIT, fully open source, is that it's permissionless. You don't need my permission. Take Stable Diffusion and build around it for image generation. Or Llama, you need a little bit of permission, but with the language models, again, you don't need that. And that makes it much easier to bring into a school system or a hospital or others, the base models, as we build out what does the future of AI education look like, attentive AI first education look like, healthcare, government, and more. And there's so many people that want to work on that, and it's inevitable that it will be there. But again, if we can set the defaults up now, that's the only way that I can think of doing it. And if we can have the representative democracy, that's the only way that I can think about doing it. And I couldn't do that in my previous company. Like, we started, but it was just too complicated, and it didn't fit with the distributed, decentralized approach either.
Don't know that I track why, but let me ask you a question. Inherent in the model, is the desired outcome present?
In terms of which desired outcome, the ability for you to use it as you will.
No. So I have before me one of the foremost thinkers in AI, one of the most important builders in AI, and I beseech you to either convince me that I'm thinking about this the wrong way or to take the following seriously. Um, the model matters to me very little. What I care about is the outcome that it creates. So if the outcome that a model creates, let's take children's education. Our current educational system is quite literally designed to make you a good factory worker. Okay, that's a terrible fucking outcome. So now, even if it does a good job of babysitting, feeding kids, whatever you gave the list earlier, if it does all those things, but it creates a factory worker and it breaks people's ability, or it never develops people's ability to solve novel problems, I've got beef, and I would not be sending my kids to public school. That's outcome. So what I'm looking for, I think a model is merely a best guess that the model maker had for what is a good outcome for somebody that engages with this. I want to know, what do you think a good outcome is? What metric is that tied to? For instance, there are the KIPP schools. The KIPP schools,
Yes.
incredible story. I won't take all of our time up here, but suffice it to say, the same kids in the literal same school building end up outperforming their non-KIPP peers by some just unimaginable amount in terms of graduation rates, literacy, mathematics, college degree attainment. It's absurd. The differences are so stark. That's an outcome. So I would love to see AI models be tied to, these are the metrics that we expect to come out well. So for instance, if it's a health AI, we expect you to live on average 5 years longer, whatever. And if that happens, great, then the AI is working. It took us to an end state that can be publicized and we can all agree upon. If it moves you backwards, then no matter how cool or neat it seems, if it's not giving you the desired outcome, it's a problem.
Yeah, no. So the way that I kind of approach this is that everyone's got different desired outcomes, right? And then there are ones, and then we have our collective and common knowledge about what works that needs to go much faster in taking the best and integrating it into our systems. So what we did at Stability is we built the data sets first, then we built generalized models, then specialized models. And that's kind of what we're doing at Schelling too. As you train the GPT-4s and Stable Diffusions and others, there's something actually literally called curriculum learning. You start it with the most general data set, just like kindergarten. Then you go to high school. Then you get to university. You teach it more and more specialized stuff, and then you fine tune it at the end to a specific use case. And then you can use the context windows and other things like that. So my thing is, if you give the building blocks at the start, so people can start integrating this into existing systems, while you have specialized teams looking at generative AI for France, generative AI for Singapore, generative AI for education, healthcare, and reimagining it end to end in a way that you can take the building blocks and build any system that you want according to your needs as a community or a country, and in a way that the system can learn what is best as well and what works and what doesn't. That's the most powerful way to do this. And if you release all of that fully open source, and we're using the compute on the supercomputers and then distributed, the secure distributed ledger as well with a currency, that is for me the best way to build this as a common public good infrastructure. And if it gets spread most widely because there's no restrictions on use and anyone can optimize it and market forces can make it super cheap to run, and people will build services industries around implementing it, you can create defaults. But who decides the defaults? That's why I think the governance thing is the most important thing. Because we have our views. You're, libertarian. I may be a bit more conservative. But who should decide the education system of Malaysia and the models that go there? You have your generalized human common knowledge, your localized Malaysian culture, and then your specialized knowledge on how education works. I think that whole system should be transparent and interpretable, which is why I think it should be fully open source and built to standards. But that system is likely to be different to Tennessee's system. And it's likely to be different to, Tyneside and Newcastle system. That's why, we're Like if we build an intelligent internet that's an open distributed AI system that can learn, but we start with these building blocks people implement, that's the only way I can see we can get to what you're describing, which is both our communal knowledge optimizing for what really matters, because we do education the way we do because it's difficult to change, but then also being able to improve what is there right now. If I go and say I'm doing a brand new school and it's actually going to teach kids agency and this and that and that, how much traction will it get and how adopted will it be? Minimal. If we start deploying models that can help schools slightly while we're reimagining the whole thing end to end and we're building in the open and inviting people to work on it as common infrastructure for humanity, that's far more powerful because the data inside the education system starts getting absorbed by these models and becoming a bit smarter because we can deploy these models literally into the schools, into a healthcare system, and they'll analyze all the radiology data and then be ready to go from a file to a flow. And again, that's why I think open source is the best way to do this. Like to get a model that can go to your hospital and look at all the radiology data, so much compliance on a proprietary model. On open standardized models, straightforward. And again, like radiology, we had a paper with Stanford Checks Agent, best performing X-ray model radiology. We can do that for any type of radiology, but just no one's done it. So I think you build the inevitable and you build it in the open and you give it away open source. You use the compute, like I said, to store distributed ledger because you need things like verification, truth, facts. You create a system whereby as people get educated, you can seek ideas and concepts and add that to global data sets that anyone can use, reflecting our common and specialized knowledge. And that's how you can get teams working on all of these and really looking at it from the base level of let's get the existing system improved to let's overhaul the system. But it's freaking hard, you know? I think so that it all comes down to just building models. And I haven't seen anyone else articulate any other way we can do it because if you don't make it open infrastructure, and if you don't think about the governance and who should decide the data and the objective function of the models and the systems, because the models are just the first step, it will be a flow system, it'll be a process that teach your kids, then it will just be one centralized authority, right? And that's the way AI is going right now. So there needs to be an alternative.
Okay, that model of localizing the governance makes a lot of sense to me, giving people control over it. I love that. I don't, however, believe that every nation has, certainly does not share my values in terms of what makes their population thrive. You don't have to look very far to realize that there are a lot of nations that are struggling. I have no reason to believe that they will use AI any differently than they use, say, the financial system, which they effectively use against their population. Now, look, every country, I think you're right. They should be able to decide for themselves. I very much am not saying we should go in, but that doesn't stop me from thinking that their systems do not lead to human flourishing, which is my North Star. I really have 4 concerns that I would love to get your feedback on, whether you agree or think I'm crazy. I am eager to be proven wrong. But I think this can go wrong in one of 4 ways. We've already talked about easier to control. So we are so easy to manipulate. I think AI is going to make us easier to manipulate. You brought up Chinese social credit score. I think effectively China is going to use AI to watch everything you do to basically guess at what you're literally thinking. Full 1984. This will not stop at you have acted inappropriately. It will go all the way to you are thinking inappropriately. So that scares the life out of me. That one feels the most like terrestrial. That's going to happen. That I don't need people to believe that AI is going to get genius level and run away. It just gives you the ability to read so much data at one time, and then you manipulate people, even if it's simply manipulating them with a credit score. And as somebody building a video game, you actually start going down that path of like, oh, well, we'll give people a score. And then you're like, oh God, like, how do we stop this from being that? Anyway, okay, so people are easier to control. That terrifies me. The next one, and we can go back through these one at a time once I've laid them all out on the table. The next one is AI becomes willful. This is the one that you and I may just have different intuitions on. So you don't seem worried about like a fast takeoff where AI just goes gangbusters, has its own desires. I tweeted out today that kids Parents don't lose control of their kids because their kids are more intelligent than them. Parents lose control of their kids because their kids are willful. They have their own desire for autonomy. If AI has a similar desire to achieve its goals, regardless of what other people want for it, I think we have a huge problem. And to me, all of the alignment stuff should be focused on this. I think the solution is, how do we make sure the AI isn't willful, that is perfectly happy to not achieve its goals? The third one is that people just become irrelevant. You said earlier that 50% of tasks are going to be replaced. I think in some percentage of that 50% is a lot of meaning and purpose. We already see deaths of despair. I think in the UK, deaths of despair is the number one cause of death for men 40 and younger. I mean, it's some absolutely terrifying stat. If that's not literally true, it is so close. And then the last one is that people become hyper isolated because they only relate to AI. Like, AI is just a better friend. It's less judgmental. It's more empathetic. And AI just does everything better. And all of a sudden, birth rates essentially crash to zero. People are having sex with robots. And that's that. Those are the 4 ways I see this going to hell in a handbasket. Did I miss any? Or do you? Well, so keep in mind, we started with the good stuff because I want people to know I really am of two minds, but I think we have to look at this to avoid the catastrophe.
Oh, no, I actually figured out a way that AI is an existential threat as well, my most likely one. We end up with a robot for every single person, and then a bad firmware upgrade. And the robots kill all the humans.
Jesus Christ.
If you've looked at the security,
reasonable that it could happen.
If you look at the security on all of those Chinese-made video cameras that monitor everything, you'll get why that's a real worry.
Jesus.
Like, literally, you can hack in and see just about anything. So we need to make sure that the robots do not get firmware upgrades. So, but if we kind of go maybe backwards through that, we'll sure figure forwards. Let's go backwards. So we start with this disconnection thing. This is, again, are we building these to be agentic? Are we building it to enhance agency? That's a design kind of question. But we're already seeing people building deep relationships with the AIs. We've seen many examples of that. But now that it's got the voice, it's got all these other things, it's got the ability to literally have video like we're seeing right now coming very soon. That's a real concern. In some ways, I'm actually even more worried about women than men, because men just don't listen and they're not very empathetic. And an AI guy will definitely listen so much better. So we do have this epidemic of kind of pornography, of, again, these deep cycles. And so we have to question, does that need regulation? Because you can be incredibly manipulative and you can make money and it's legal, right? But it's like a super AI honeypot. That has to have an impact on our society. It has to have an impact, again, on these kids. And we may get to a situation where the youth are revolting. What do they believe in? And usually what happens when we have an excess of youth not doing anything is we have war, honestly. Literally, that's been the classic throughout all of history. Best way to get rid of kind of the youth. So this is a real concern.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete with costs that are spiraling out of control? Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and nobody does data better than Oracle. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/theory. Again, that's oracle.com/theory. Oracle.com/theory.
I think we probably do need some regulation around that. I'm not sure what it is, but more it's about design standards and ethics. Because, like, when you're making like a gacha game, right? These are the loot box games. There are regulations around that because they can be so addicting. Casinos. Again, implementing this technology, you can make it ridiculous. Maybe we do need some regulation around AI partners, friends, all of this kind of stuff in order to avoid, as you said, this antisocial behavior. We can also use AI to create pro-social behavior. Like, you can connect you with people like you. We're already seeing like online dating taking a bit of a hit. What about online connection between communities like Eventbrite on steroids or something like that, right? Find people who think like you or think different to you, form better communities, etc. So I think that's a bit of a design pattern thing. Maybe there is regulation. I'm not sure what else to do about that. Just like, again, how do we deal with the porn epidemic? How do we deal with, the TikTok epidemic, like all these kind of other things. Actually, maybe if I jump next from that straight to the China social credit score, kind of this direction. Governments rule on this spectrum from, well, they are the entity with a monopoly on political violence, and they rule on the spectrum from complete force to complete like legitimacy, as it were. But governments always want to perpetuate. Is there ever going to be a situation where the Democratic Party says, actually, I think the Republicans will do a better job? Never. Most of bureaucracy is about perpetuating. They don't want to take risks. They want to kind of do this. So it becomes misaligned. I mean, I sometimes think that corporations and governments are slow, dumb AI. And again, their objective function is misaligned to human flourishing, the way it should be. Usually it's just to perpetuate, right? For various reasons, social status, kind of money, all these kind of things. You look at the UK today, and you look at the recent violence that we've had, and people are being arrested for Facebook posts and jailed.
Dude, it's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, like forget about China. It's here in the UK. Got similar laws across the world, right? In the wake of the Arab Spring, what happened is many governments looked at the protesters, identified them by facial recognition, and arrested their families. And again, the ability to do this hyper-personalized thing, like your social credit score drops if you're around people with similar social credit scores. Again, thought crime. Like when you look at the little app of Xi Jinping's teachings, it tracks your eyes to see if you're actually looking at the app. But now we can actually track physiognomy, and we can see what your mental reactions and your sub-reactions are. I can see if you're lying almost with the way that you're talking. These are definitely things that are a threat because the governments will tend towards more control. They will tend towards thought policing. And again, that's why we set defaults. What is the system that will run the government in the future? Like I said, eventually I believe the governments will be run by AI. So of course AI can do better than politicians. Who thinks politicians are doing a good job? The politicians themselves don't think they're doing a good job. But why do we have governance? To protect us, right? Does it protect us? Sometimes. Maybe not. And when you don't have any ability to have an uprising, like why would you have civil war? Why would you have unrest in America? It's because people don't believe they have an outlet. Usually when 12% of a population shifts, that's when you get something like you've just seen in Bangladesh, where the power structure shifted and the government's changed. And we had like two leaders, Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia, for like 30 years. And now the first time it's going to be someone new. And again, that was a social media thing. It was others. With the advent of technology, it might be impossible to have that because of the hyper-targeting. Well, that sounds a bit like Captain America's Civil War. But, realistically, again, it's kind of thing towards that. So kind of those are two of the things. And again, I think you need to make a design choice because the AI will be implemented by the government not anytime soon, apart from places like China. But then also a lot of these control things are around zero-sum or negative-sum thinking. I'm going to lose power, so I'm going to implement this technology versus this technology can cause growth. It can lead my people forward. And we've seen like the embracing of like something like WeChat or India Stack and Aadhaar in India. They can be used for control. They can be used for creation, right? They leap forward economies when you have instant payments and your DMV stuff is on WeChat and other things like that. So again, technology tends to be dual use. I think those are kind of two of the things. In terms of there's another one, takeoff. Like, will it just go crazy?
I call it AI becomes willful.
AI becomes willful. I think I have two minds about this. So there's AI becomes willful and kills us, and there's just AI becomes willful and like, what the hell is this in the market? Corporations have rights. And in Wyoming, there was recent legislation passed that allows DAOs to form, decentralized autonomous organizations. Theoretically, an AI can be an organization, a corporation, and it will have rights. And it will just go and do stuff without any humans running it. Think about how crazy that is right now. But it's going to be par for the course. So you'll be competing in the market against AIs. I look at this again like governments, organizations that like slow down AIs. Bitcoin is a bit like an AI. It provisions humans and now uses as much energy as Argentina, the Netherlands. Bitcoin uses 160 terawatt hours of energy. All the data centers in the world use 360.
Wow.
So you think about hyper-optimizing AI. It doesn't have generalized intelligence, no. So the question is, will we have an AI that runs away? Maybe. Again, this willful AI that wants to do things because our organizations are already optimized. And so what happens when our organizations are run by AI? And is there any chance that we won't have organizations run by AI? I think there is there? It's an inevitability, right? So against that, this is against guardrails. There is this thing. Anything that can stop a bad good AI is a good AI. Unfortunately, that may be the case. Like one of my teachers, Og Demore, who ran the GitHub program, Copilot program at Microsoft, he just created a pen testing, so a penetration testing AI that outperforms humans. But someone's building the thing on the other side. Yeah, so penetration testing is when you just attack a software system.
Yeah, no, we do that here on our video game.
Yeah, so you can use this software now, outperforms humans across the board. Again, but what's the only solution to the opposite of that? It's probably an intelligent AI system that protects you. What's the only solution to hyper-personalized calls and everything like that? It's probably going to be an AI that protects you, right? What's the only solution to market? It's your own AI. So I think that this is kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of willful AI. What's the only protection against willful AI? Automatic market makers, AIs that act as balancers. So I think, again, there's this autonomous AI concept and there's a balancing AI concept I don't think it's talked about enough. From our own personal lives, balancing our community, balancing our markets, balancing our society. We need load balancers, right? Because how else are humans going to keep up? Can't keep up with the AIs on the other side, can you? What was the third thing? I've forgotten.
That was the third thing. And then the fourth thing is people become irrelevant because all their meaning and purpose goes away because all the tasks are done better by AI.
So purpose is an interesting thing, right? And happiness as well. Like there's a Japanese concept of ikigai. Do what you like, do what you're good at, do where you're adding value, and then in the middle you're happy. And people need purpose and other things. Over half the world adheres to a religion and a faith, and some people just need that, something bigger than them. Like the British philosopher Isaiah Berlin had this conceptualization of positive versus negative liberty. The positive liberty was the freedom to believe in big things, which he said was terrible. Fascism is like religion, patriotism, all this kind of stuff, because people subsume themselves to that, but it does coalesce, right? And the negative liberty was the freedom from anyone telling you what to do, basically. So free market, capitalism, all these other things. And you've seen like brands fill people's lives and other things like that. I'm not sure which one's positive, but I do know that a lot of people don't believe in the big stuff anymore. And so that's why I think that narratives need to be told of hope. Like, again, say what you like about Obama, but at least that was a hopeful narrative. I look at US politics now. No one's saying, it's looking in the past, make America great again. My politicians, my opponents are rubbish. Not, we can educate every American child using this technology. We will be the leaders in innovation. We are going to get to Mars. We'll make sure that no one ever goes hungry again.
Emad, here is the really bad news is that is literally RFK Jr.'s platform. You gave it almost to a T. And my big concern is that the world just isn't there right now. And this is why I worry about manipulation is even though you just laid out, I'm here for it. I'm voting for you. I'm voting for him. Whoever's running on that platform, I am here for it. But the world is not interested in that song right now. I think largely because of economic forces and algorithmic manipulations that have crushed them into tribes and put them at war with each other.
It's because the US system can't accept him. With the way it's literally set up, it's impossible for him to win. But the question is, how do you spread narratives? How does religion form? How does messaging form? Right? And again, we see this. We see the rise of the demagogues on one side. We know the negative stuff can fit. The positive stuff can also fit. And again, like there are narratives in faith of positivity, and this Girardian scapegoating of those not like us. On the one side, we have really well functioning communities that are secure and have positive things. On the other side, we have crusades and jihads and all that kind of stuff. With politics, I think, again, it's a bit different because politically you can say that. But the question is, do people believe it's even possible? I don't think anyone believes that he's going to win or he has a potential of winning because of the US system. Now, if you look at it longer term, an AI-enhanced political party that had full stack generative AI and the ability to target and change narratives and all the proper dashboarding and everything would make a difference. Who's going to do that? I don't know, right? But for me, it's about let's change the defaults at a personalized level. And again, what are you optimizing for is the key thing. Are you optimizing for agency? Are you optimizing for enlightenment? Are you optimizing for positivity? Just like the bad features can come in, and again, our systems are engineered right now to activate the limbic system of fear, distrust, hope, polarization for economic ends. Can we build a better system? That's kind of what I'm questioning. So like when I took a step back from stability, I was like, let's design Schelling and let's build these open models. We don't need anyone's permission. I will build the best cancer, autism, multiple sclerosis models in the world. I'll give them free and they'll make a difference, right? What does the internet look like in the future? What does our society OS look like? And what should it look like? Who should govern that? And what's protecting us given the inevitability of this technology? And it's not easy, but if we start outlining where we actually want to go as a society, then I think things will be better. But that's about getting the smartest people in society and the most impactful agentic people in society to go and just build that. So I'm as concerned as you are about this. But like I said, I think this meaning, there's no substitute for a gap in meaning rather than inserting meaning. By default, the meaning that will be inserted is demagoguery, or again, we saw the rise of ISIS. We've seen the rise of far right, far left, this increasing polarization. Because people don't feel like they can do anything because they've lost their agency. And again, this is an important thing about how we design our systems. Are we designing our systems to be agentic and replace humans and to perpetuate power structures because humans are squishy, right? Or are we designing our systems to increase human agency and capability? And so my thinking again is if we release really solid open source building blocks that are built with that, that will be more aligned or can be more aligned and we can mitigate the negatives. Similar to, like I said, right now, governments are trialing using ChatGPT and Gemini and other things in decision-making processes. I believe that no AI should be used in any decision-making process unless all the data is interrogable. I wouldn't eat food if I didn't know what ingredients were in it. I wouldn't hire someone if I didn't know what their CV was. Classically, maybe now I would, right? You know what I mean? But why do we accept AI when we don't know where it's been taught? And then again, like I said, right now we have this small window before mass adoption where we can set defaults, but in 5 years it's gone, or 3 years it's even gone. Because the technology proliferates incredibly quickly and it's incredibly impactful. 3-5 years, something like that.
All right. Eric Schmidt said that he thinks AI will disempower the state. And so somewhere like China is probably more likely to be afraid of it. Do you think that AI disempowers the state or emboldens the state to manipulate and control their constituency?
I think that if you look at the state, education, healthcare, all these things, it assumes ergodicity in humans, like 1,000 tosses of the coin is the same as 1,000 coins tossed at the same time, because it can't customize to us. Like again, we know people that go into government, healthcare, education, all these systems, they go in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and then the system grinds it out of them. It chews them up and spits them out because it can't adapt to every individual. So if you really think about, again, what should democracy be in an AI age? It's representative democracy with citizen assemblies, AI kind of doing dynamic policy work, fully interrogable by anyone and adaptive, right? And then people using that technology to do better. Our systems need an intelligence upgrade. They're slow down AIs. If we do that, And again, this is why we're going to build open government systems and make them available to everyone, both the building blocks and the end-to-end, and inviting everyone to contribute, of course. Then that's the open infrastructure that we need. Otherwise, what's going to happen is the systems will be misaligned because people will just use these individual tools to hyper-target, because they're not thinking about the longer term. Like, how often do you think politicians steps back and think, what am I really here for? And instead, they just say that all of politics is who I owe and who owes me. In the China case, the interesting thing is they don't want AGI because it is a threat to their system. The US wants AGI. China doesn't want AGI. And so many of the discussions are rubbish. I mean, also it's stupid. Like, China has 3 of the world's 5 fastest supercomputers. It can outbuild anyone. It has more data than anyone because it can use all the IP stuff. And it can get all its citizens to just do data augmentation. It's also silly. The state in China, doesn't want AGI. The AI will allow it to expand more. It'll probably be more controlling, but does the average Chinese person mind if they've got economic growth? Because a lot of these questions also come like, are you growing or are you in the zero-sum game? And I can't tell you if AI will be inflationary or deflationary at this point. I can tell you that I can see a path where it's got a far bigger economic impact than COVID on the positive and the negative. So we need to build our systems to be able to respond to that. And again, we need to increase the agency of people to participate in that. So I think it could go both ways. And again, this is why I think the next few years are so vital. Because even if it stopped today, it's still happening, right? No more breakthroughs, no more Q star, agentic, strawberry fields, whatever.
What do you think religion's response is going to be to AI?
Just talking to the Vatican about Catholic AI, so there'll be some models trained soon. It allows, again, what's the purpose of religion? It's community building, it's spreading the word, it's kind of expansionary there. My hope is that it will be better, but again, it comes down to what's your optimization function. I think that it does vary across religions, though, because you have very top-down ones, and then you have religions like Sunni Islam, for example, that was based on, you have the eternal word of the Quran, temporal life of the Prophet, and then you interpolate between the two. Sometime around like the 13th century, it got too tough for people to do that with the oral tradition, so he wrote everything down. And then you went from dynamic jurisprudence and fatwas to ossified one stuck in the 13th century. Whereas now you can interrogate every single story of the Prophet and the Quran with AI, and so you can have dynamic fatwa reconstruction that shows all the reasonable doubt and things. So I think that one gets an upgrade. Other ones maybe don't. They go the opposite way. But again, who knows? It'll take a while for religion to get this technology. It's not exactly a Paulina. Maybe we'll get different religions, more religions, like the outbreak of cults and other splinters that we saw in the 70s. Because one of the things I do think is that people want meaning. And they're going to look for it wherever they can find it, right?
Do you ever worry that we need hardship and that AI is going to eliminate hardship and actually therefore create a problem?
What do you mean, the Star Trek future versus the Star Wars future?
Yeah. So I have a hypothesis that humans can't be fulfilled unless they're working hard at something that matters to them and others.
Well, like I said, I like the Japanese concept. If you guys do what you like, do what you're good at, and do what you believe you're adding value, and then you're generally going to be happy in the middle of that. I don't necessarily necessitates hardship, but necessitates progress, right? And it necessitates self-belief. Because again, someone can be happy just cleaning floors. Or someone can be happy just painting a few hours a day and just spending time with their family. I think that humans are not continuously happy, though. We've each got our kind of own things. But I don't think, again, there's this hygiene level whereby we have enough food in the world to feed everyone. There's a coordination issue. We have enough technology to educate everyone. If we can get everyone up to a level of universal basic intelligence, universal basic resources, then, like I said, everything else is almost entertainment that enables the happiness. But if you're not fed, if you're not educated properly, if you don't have the right healthcare, you're going to be sad. I do think there is this additional thing, though, of like, we make our own hardships. Like, you go to a Marine Corps and you go through a hazing thing that binds people together, sororities. You basically choose to do a startup, stare into the abyss and chew glass because you're going to try and do something different. I don't think AI will ever get to a point where, like we're just those fat guys in Wall-E. I think humans will always try more, but we'll have more tools at our behest. Just like you and I can call on more resources than kings previously.
By a
We're very
lot.
fortunate. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. We're not going to stop because, again, it's antithetical. Unless you're like super enlightened Buddha, you're not going to be like happy and content just doing literally nothing and staring at a wall, right? You'll be looking for
It's
that next
interesting.
thing.
I think on that I feel quite differently than you. So and maybe it just boils down to the simple difference in belief that I do believe people have to work hard. I think if they are cleaning floors and it's easy, they will not be happy. If they're painting and they're not literally at the edge of their abilities where they get angry and throw some of the paintings away, and that the few times where it comes together, then yes, they can be happy. But I think if it comes easily, they're not going to be able to appreciate it. And so with AI, if it really does come in and make everything easy and simple, it's utopia, world of abundance. I think, I forget who said this quote, I think they will start breaking things just to feel like they matter again.
I mean, I've got a different view to that. But then that begs the question, maybe a 1984 Brave New World China social credit score system with Soma and people being made happy. And then those who want to strive and go up, being like, maybe that's better. I don't know. I don't even know who makes that decision. Like, again, do the Chinese want an American style system? The actual Chinese people.
Right. Probably not.
Do the Americans want Chinese? No, they don't. I think that it differs for different people around the world. But again, I think there is something inherent in humans about kind of progress. And the people at the edge, because I think everyone is on this spectrum. I think Tim Urban at Wait But Why refers to this. Everyone on the spectrum of cooks versus chefs. We all have that within us. Are you making the recipes? And that's you striving, that's you painting, that's you creating, or are you just following the recipes? A lot of people are actually genuinely content with following. And this is kind of, again, what we've seen throughout history. Like, again, I think your view of the world, I don't think many people are happy at all. So surely the peaceful thing would be to make them happy by striving in a video game economy with Soma and kind of other things, because they'll be content and they'll be happy.
You lost me at Soma. Soma obviously is, for people that don't know, Brave New World. You're numbing people out. You're letting them give into their hedonistic pleasures. That certainly, as I think about building virtual worlds, I think about the thing that biologically we are driven to do. And so, no, I wouldn't want things to be easy. I would want things for people to make progress. You mentioned that earlier. I think that's critically important. But the key to the formulation that you laid out that I think is so important, Ikigai requires that you be doing something that adds value. And that's where I'm like, I think people are going to struggle with that. If AI is just making all problems go away, now humans have to find a way. What is that thing that I can do that other people actually think are valuable? And that's where this gets interesting.
Well, that's where you can delineate it down to the community level. So the Argentinian FS program, rather than doing universal basic income, did universal basic jobs. And lots of women came into the economy on the localized level where they tried it. And the community would come up with jobs and context. Because again, think about a video
do you know their
game.
birth rate?
This was like a couple of a decade ago, decade or two.
Ooh, man, we're going to need some stats on that, because if pulling women into the workforce implies that that is how that society is telling women that they can add value, which, hey, is one of the ways for sure. Love it the most. My wife is an entrepreneur, dyed in the wool, hardcore, no kids. I get it. But at the same time, that's horrendous for the birth rate.
Well, I think that, again, you can't have everything at once. And the key thing is having the opportunity, right? So I don't like universal basic income.
Because why?
Because it's a handout without meaning. And I think that it can become misallocated. Again, when I look at the future, I see two things. One is, we're working on a conceptualization of universal basic intelligence, where everyone has a series of AI things for free, basically. But then the more valuable stuff you can work for, shall we say. But then also, I think we will need to, for example, have a universal community job program whereby the community can define its own value and its own jobs within that. We may move to a future in decades where we have no more money. So the existing system's about to break anyway. We're maxed out on our credit cards, the petrodollar peg is gone and everything like that. You need to define meaning, but meaning is defined almost intersubjectively and localized as well. So when I play a video game, I have meaning within the context of the video game and the rules, and I feel progress. Like, why do I like Elden Ring? Why do I just complete the DLC? Because, beat those blooming bosses and had lots of failure, and it's a growing experience. Why it's incredibly popular. Made $1 billion, right? Even though it's so challenging. But we're wired that way in that we need to have something to measure against to progress, and that's why I said value. But the value can be, I'm a good member of my congregation in church, or it can be, I'm very good at creating paintings, or I'm very good at my job. I just think we have to be a bit more rigorous in the way that we do that and think about new ways to do that, because otherwise I'm that graduate and I've got a computer science degree and there's no programming jobs. And I lose my agency. Because a lot of this that I think we're discussing, again, it all comes down to, I think AI agents, it's just agency. Can I do something? Do I have control of my own destiny? Can I have value according to my own context system? And can I progress? Again, it's the story of the investment banker, fisherman. I think, do you know that one? Whereby
Investment banker and a fisherman? No.
Investment banker, retired. He goes and he meets fishermen coming back and, he's got a few fish. He's like, what are you doing? It's like 2 p.m. He's like, I'm going back to my family and I'm going to, grill these fish on the barbecue and, we're going to get together with some friends.
I know where this is headed.
It's like, yeah, you can go back and you can just do some more fishing and then you can use the proceeds to get a boat and then, get more boats, blah, blah, blah. So what do I do at the end of that? Well, you can retire and you can go and you can do some fishing, you can hang out with your family, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we all kind of at different points of our lives have different measures, be it grades, be it sports, be it games, other things that we measure ourselves against. And again, this is where I think the AI balances can be so important, because often we lose sight of what we actually want to do. This is, again, I mentioned Clayton Christensen earlier. I think he's got fantastic business thinking. He had a stroke, cancer, and a heart attack.
Whoa.
And then he came back from that. He lost the ability to speak. And he wrote this book, How Will You Measure Your Life? Because he was schoolmates with Jeff Skilling from Enron and all sorts of things. This book of business knowledge, but then also, how many of us stop to think, but at the end of our lives, what will we measure ourselves against? What's our progress? What are our key performance indicators, right? Because we get caught up in life all the time. And so we kind of have localized maxima. We don't have broader maxima. And you might identify that as, by the time you're 18, you spent 95% of the time, all the time you spent with your family, with your parents, probably 98% in some cases. Now, what am I actually maximizing for? What am I measuring against? Because you can't manage what you can't measure. But again, am I adding any value? Because the key reason that I think you have the protests, that you have the lack of belief for the kids that you're talking about, this crisis of mental health. I have no control over my own destiny. I can't do anything. I have no value. And I'm looking at social media and everyone's got value and they're showing value and I'm not anything like them. And I had this promise of this American dream or this social contract that just doesn't exist anymore. And why? There's nothing I can do about it. Once you believe you can do something about it, then that changes your entire perspective. And it's crazy because any of us can, okay, I don't have talent in making food. I can go and convince a bunch of amazing chefs to make a restaurant and pull it together and then we can do it. But so can anyone else listening this. But they won't, because very few people do that. But those who do can be successful. There's always a fear of failure. There's always a fear of, can I even do that? If you can't do it, you can convince someone who can. So I think increase agency, have self-correcting value systems, be a bit more intentional about how you do it. Use the AI to help that because you can help think through it. These are the types of things I think may help, but it's not easy, man. And again, actually, one of the amazing things of this is that we have a lot of global problems, mental health, climate, this, that, birth rate. This AI can finally push intelligence to the edge. But what we teach that AI and how we align it is going to be the most important thing. And that isn't alignment for making sure it doesn't kill all the humans. I think that's maybe a data question, other things we can do. It is some of these things that you're discussing right now. And we have to build that intentionally as a society.
How do we avoid Black Mirror? I want the benefits of AI, but I don't want to end up in this sort of emotional, uncanny valley. Again, as a video game developer, I think about this a lot. I want to bring really rad things into my game, like Elden Ring, where you really have a sense of, I made progress, I accomplished something, this was fun. I get that it's just a game, but it was just tremendously enjoyable. But there's a phenomenal episode of Black Mirror where the woman's, I think, fiance dies, and she's able to get a robot with his AI in it. It looks like him, it talks like him, it sounds like him, but some part of her knows, he's deeply comforting at first, deeply comforting, but some part of her knows it's not him. How do we escape that? I can get what I want, which is my grandma back, my grandpa, my parents, lover that passed away, whatever, but it's not really them. And so there is some dark off-key note that's struck. How do we have our cake and eat it too, Emad?
I think it's just against societal norms where it's a dangerous society. I think some level of regulation is needed. Like, again, the same with the gacha mechanics for video games, there's loot box mechanics and more. Like what you just described.
So are you saying pass a law that doesn't let you bring your dead wife back in robot form?
No, because I think some people will want that. And again, but then the question is, what's the permission system? Because they should give permission for something like that, right? These are things whereby legislation and society, I think, again, needs to have just groups of talented people that can help inform and they can help adapt to that. And there's a commonality of this because the dead wife back, dead husband back is same across everyone in the world, potentially. The cost of building an AI that can replicate, and again, it will be available on WhatsApp, video, anything to talk to you, or a loved one who's about to pass away, is probably going to be $100 next year. $100.
That's insane.
And 15 cents per million words, they say. And any language, anywhere. You just need some of their history and them to chat a little bit. And they have the voice, they have everything. So this is moving so fast with things like that, which again, I don't know, will have a real emotional impact. You might find it discordant, but someone else might not. And so again, this is the thing where, you know, you want your libertarianism versus kind of other stuff. One of the most difficult things is, again, we're very privileged. We grow up kind of where we have, and then but we've also pushed through. We have our own viewpoints in the world. The reality is AI will be used differently by everyone around the world. And some people will use it to enslave, some people will use it to emancipate, right? But it can't just be that there is only a few choices. You need to proliferate some of the choices. And again, we need to set some standards around this because these are really hard things. Like when they're bringing back loved ones, I don't know how I feel about it, but I don't think it's something we should legislate against. But it's something we should definitely look into the harms of, right? Because I can see the positive and the negative. And that applies to so many uses of this technology because it reflects us. And it's actually come from our collective intelligence on the internet, which again is kind of crazy. We need better data sets. And it resonates, which is the crazy thing. Again, once you hear an AI whisper to you, you know, with full emotion, it's crazy. Once you see it, I think the latest video technology, would you agree it's broken through the uncanny valley now? Whereby
it's incredible.
You and I have trained eyes. Like, I would say until a couple of months ago, I'd be like, I see something instantly, that's AI. Now I'm like, I can't tell. Like, then I go and look,
and
I can see some subtle things, right? But just, again, my fast thinking is like, I can't tell anymore. So that's why I think we need to set standards around it. We need to adapt. We need to proliferate those. But then we also need to, again, allow for liberty, allow for use, as long as it doesn't infringe upon the rights of others. And that's really hard. That's why we need to distribute this intelligence. We need an open distributed intelligent AI system. And then we'll have the proprietary ones and all these other ones too, but it needs to exist with the best standards we can have. So you can say, what is the best way to teach calculus? Should it be taught all is another question, right? But that might not be the way you teach it because of your local curricula. But eventually we want to move our infrastructure of thought towards an optimized thing. We want to build a society OS and reconstruct it. And this is the one chance we get at that, right? And my view is that countries and communities that embrace this and take the best of our generalized common knowledge and these systems will outperform those that don't. And so, again, if we set good standards, that's huge potential for an incredibly positive view of humanity where we can solve and coordinate for most of the problems that can adapt to all the bad stuff. Again, this OODA loop, because we don't know what we don't know might emerge. Like, it may be that there's an AI that figures out how to hypnotize people. What will you do when that emerges? And it's controlled. It can be a foreign adversary. It can be Facebook. How are we going to react to that? Like, literally hypnosis. Hypnosis kind of works, right?
Welcome to my nightmare.
But again, we need to build systems that are more robust, self-adapting, and I think we can only do that with AI.
What would you give them as your best argument for why AI is going to be awesome?
I think it depends on your framing, but the most powerful thing I've basically thought of is AI is like those really talented graduate assistants that we wish we had, but we can never be sure of. And what does that mean? It means we can do things we could never do before. So the very practical thing is we're all going to die, right? And it's probably going to be through some sickness. All of us know someone in our lives who've had cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, one of these conditions. You will have an AI in a year or two that gives you comprehensive, authoritative, up-to-date knowledge on these conditions through your journey and outperforms human doctors on empathy and is available in every language. From the medical side to, how to talk to your family, mental health, and more over the coming years. That's something that could never have been done before, and that will reduce human suffering. Because the loss of agency you feel when you get one of those diagnoses is insane, right? And again, like, it's difficult to find the support you need. That's just one small example. And I think that once we have that right framing, we can think of many more examples where we just I wish I had some experts around me. I wish I had support. I wish I had help in the digital and physical realm.
I just wrote down small. If that's a small example, which already sounds pretty insane, what are some of the ways that you think society will be positively impacted as you think about those ripples away from just the individual? What ends up happening to society?
I think that the infrastructure of our society is based on texts and reports and bureaucracy. If you think about something like the US elections are coming up, it'd be a unpleasant time, right? Having the ability to embed artificial intelligence in the government to check every single policy and then make it relevant to you and explain it comprehensively will be awesome for understanding candidate positions. But then also for going to the DMV and getting your driver's license. That will be automated in some number of years. May take longer, may take sooner, depending on our capabilities. But every single one of the things that you find frustration about, where there's this speech to report framework, where there's this idea, the image, video, the barriers are being reduced for all of those. The information will flow more freely. And again, think about most of your frustrations in life. It's due to lack of agency. It's due to frustration over systems of information, getting stuff done, or access to information. All of those barriers will be brought down by this technology, having that role of, again, these talented grads everywhere. There's no part of information society that doesn't impact. So hopefully, it'll help us reduce frustration, increase flow, increase our, fun quotient as well, and maybe make things more functional.
So that is, when you talk about a grad student, I think that is something that's really clear for people that are in the quote unquote elite bucket. But for the average person, how's this going to impact them? Because I think the average person is panicking because they think about their job and they think this is going to be automated away. And it really might be. And so if you were talking to somebody who you say, oh, it's like having a grad student in your pocket, they're like, I don't even know what that is. I don't care about grad students. Why is their life going to be better?
Oh, because they can do more. This is the thing whereby you've always had technology, like spreadsheets came and it changed accounting and other things, but it created brand new jobs. The main concern that we've had, we discussed this kind of last year, I think, was can you create the new jobs quick enough? But the reality is anyone listening to this can do them more effectively using this technology. Even if it's in the report writing phase, everyone has to write something. or summarizing emails, this technology started to seep in. Siri will actually be useful, right? Like, again, if it's not a grad student, it's a hire, a junior hire. You want someone to help you. And bringing that hire in will be impactful and they'll do what it says on the tin. All these issues like hallucinations where the AI makes something up, all these issues about the AI going wonky, they're being slowly ironed out. And now you get these really reliable partners that can work with you. That's on the productivity side. Then there's the other side, which is the creativity side. You use Suno, you use Udio, you use Midjourney, now you use Grok's image generation. Like you could never generate images like you can now. And now video's coming. You can make music. And it's one thing making that instant, just playing around with prompts. Once you actually start to apply yourself, just like anything, your creative capability has gone dramatically up. Now, what does that mean? It means that as you're doing your job, the question is, if I had helpers, how could I do my job better? Then you'll outcompete those that do not embrace this technology because the pace of technological adoption is always slower than you'd expect until it isn't. And right now we're in this building phase where everyone's trying this technology. But the implementation will come in a few years, but then it'll come as a wave. So if you've got 1-2 years experience applying this technology to whatever your job is, to make it more efficient, to make yourself more productive, then you'll do better.
Okay, so let me give you what I see is the big problems that we're facing as a society today, and let me know if AI helps, and if so, how. So right now, I think people really feel the sting of inflation. Prices skyrocketed during COVID. They have not come back down. People do not feel good at the grocery store. A Zoomer has 10% of the buying power that a Boomer had at the exact same age in their 20s. There's a just mental health crisis in young people. Parents rightly are freaking out. They don't know what to do about it. And I think a lot of people look at AI and go, oh my God, like this is just the TikTok algorithm come to life. It's going to suck my child into a black hole. This is not good, Emad. These are all bad things. What do you say to that basket of, I just want to be able to pay for things. I just want my kids to be okay. How's AI going to help there, or is it not?
Well, I think, AI is a very broad thing. So TikTok AI is different to generative AI, is different to Facebook AI in some ways, different to Siri. It could be an incredibly negative future, These things are dangerous. You see them hijack the minds of a generation, and now it could be amped. But again, like I said, on the flip side, there's the positive side. Like, how could we use this positively? So you look at things like inflation. Inflation is a monetary phenomenon here, whereby we're suffering the overhang for all the stimulus spending during COVID, which, nobody knew how much we had to spend. We didn't know how many people would die. And now it's the overhang from that. So inflation started to come down a bit, but you said buying power has decreased in general because of this. When you look at the components of inflation, food and other things, I think that, and you look at AI and you think about massive numbers of graduates, digital graduates entering the workforce, it's probably going to be deflationary. But then the question is, can you have the stuff you need for living? That's your hygiene factor. The stuff you need not to be bothered. And in fact, I can't remember who said it. Someone said there's only two types of things that are for living and entertainment. So we've got to get to that basic level first, and having more efficient systems to organize things, to remove bureaucracy, to remove this overhead, should help with that. It should be deflationary, taking apart bureaucracies, doing these things. There's a question of jobs, a question of, let's say, the American dream. Like, what is the American dream? If you strive hard, you work hard, you can be successful. I think part of this crisis is, given all the knocks that we've seen, and you said parents thinking about their kids, if my kid tries hard, can they be successful, particularly when the AIs are coming? I said at the start of last year, in 5 years, there are no more programmers. I should have added, as we know it. Just like, we grew up with the Flash programmers. Flash was programming, and other things. The nature will change. Like if you use Claude from Anthropic right now, you can make games, basic games like Snake and others, just by typing and telling it how to edit it, and it will do it live right there. It's more proficient than most graduate programmers. But that means the level of graduate programming has to increase. So I think that when we look at that, this is the key worry is, can we create the jobs in time, or will there be enough of a demand response from the increased amounts of entertainment and productivity to allow these kids to have careers, and what will those look like? That's a really complicated question. When I think about things like housing, inflation, others, and monetary things, I think that it's deflationary and the cost of living right and the cost of organizing right will drop. And, again, these are very basic things like the fat in the US system. Like how much does LA or San Francisco spend on homelessness? It's over $100,000 per person per year. AI can easily deconstruct all that spending and route it more appropriately. Will all that happen? I don't know, 5-10 years out, right? But then you apply that to almost every part of living, and you can see how it can make it more efficient and more accessible. But we've got these competing factors here whereby costs will come down, but will demand catch up? And this opens up that question of, do we need UBI? Do we need universal basic jobs? Do we need more stimulus? It all depends on the pace of adoption of this technology and how we deploy it.
Okay, so we'll get to the downside of it first, but give me the positive look at this deployed well. What does that look like? What would we need to do? So integrating into the government, that seems really smart, not only so that I can or everybody can understand these are the candidates, these are the positions, that bill that they dropped last night that, is 1,900 pages and it has to be voted on tomorrow. Here's the summation. Here are the key points. Here are the things they're trying to sneak in. Super helpful. Transparency on budgeting, super helpful. But what are other ways that you can see where if we integrate this into society well, that it drives costs down, where people care without triggering that existential crisis of, well, now what do I do as a human?
So I think if we look at regulated sectors, these are two very important ones. Let's start with two things: education and healthcare. After the recent, I think, Trump-Musk debate, discussion, I think they said, why even have a Department of Education in the US if educational outcomes are what they are? Like kids graduating from school not being literate is insane.
Yeah.
Right? And what is school? It's childcare mixed with a social status game mixed with a petri dish in many cases, right? The only thing that's been proven to work in education is called the Bloom effect. 2 standard deviation improvement outcomes is 1-to-1 tuition. Sometime in the near future, every single child should have their own personalized AI tutor that can tell, are they auditory? Are they visual learners? Do they have dyslexia? And adapt the curriculum to them and encourage them to engage with others and increase their agency and basically help them on their educational path. Again, 1-to-1 tuition has a 2 standard deviation improvement. And it's the only thing that's proven to work in education, really. So something like that could transform the education sector from an information going back and forth with the kids and, again, bringing kids together to do stuff. Now, the question is who's going to build it, and who's going to build it right and implement it. We'll come back to later. So healthcare is another one. The average US life expectancy has been dropping, while everyone else has been increasing. How insane is that? The US spends more than the UK as a percentage of GDP on public healthcare. Yet you all have to have private healthcare as well. And UK healthcare isn't bad. It isn't great. But again, you don't have that health that you deserve. And ultimately, it's your health that's going to get you. Your health impacts every part of your life. And ultimately, we all will die. What if we could reduce many of these things? And that, again, is your personal healthcare buddy. But also, I think every medical diagnosis has to be checked by AI. Before the diagnosis is made by AI, it'll be malpractice not to have that. And how many lives could be saved? We all know people that have had botched diagnosis, botched this, botched that. You won't have that with AI. AI outperforms human doctors on diagnosis, as well as, like I said, empathy. So when you kind of look at all the sectors that are regulated, they're usually regulated because they have a real human impact. And much of the issue is information flow and personalization. The teacher cannot teach 30 kids at once because their attention is split and they're misaligned incentives. And the thing is, we all know people who start and want to become teachers and doctors and in the government. Most of them start with ideals and they have to beat them out of them by the system, right? They can't reach everyone. We see this again and again and again. This technology can change that because you can have personalized information for every single individual relevant to them. And you can coordinate information as well, our collective knowledge. So this is where we should have all the cancer knowledge in the world comprehensively, authoritatively, and up to date, available to anyone at any time as a public good, for example. And again, that just needs to be built. So I'd say those are the types of areas, the regulated industries, where you can have a transformation: government, education, healthcare, and more. And that's again what you need for living. Then there's the other side, which is entertainment, which is we all know creatives. And how much does it cost to make a movie? Well, it's getting smaller and smaller. How much does it cost to make a video game? How much does it cost to tell your story? Like TikTok was one of the first indications where, you're doing short clips, right? But we both, I think, agree in a few years, you'll be able to make Hollywood length movies, because movies are just made of 2.5-second shots. Now, it might not just be type of prompts. I don't think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, I want to tell a story. I want the control over that. We have the generative capabilities that we can do that, be it music, be it movies, be it more. And again, it can transform because you're no longer constrained to the medium. Like, why should songs be 3 minutes long? Like, what is the appropriate way to tell a story? Is it snippets? Is it large movie? You can play around with it. You can take this podcast and translate it into 100 languages now, and it'll have your voice and my voice. So I think these are some of the things I've been thinking about. Like, again, that's just having a bigger team around you, and a team that's on your side when it comes to regulated industry and increased transparency, breaking down the barriers. And then, like, so on the creative side, it's building the tools that remove the barriers to people telling their stories.
All right, I'm going to look at everything through an optimistic lens for now. Like I said, again, we'll get to the darker sides of this. I'm going to paint a picture. This is what I actually think is going to happen. But if you spot any naive elements in this, please point them out, because I really do want an accurate vision of the future more than just an exciting one. But when I look out at the world, there are a few things that I see. Number one is the health crisis. You've already talked about that. I'm going to have something in my pocket that's going to help diagnose, or if I've already been diagnosed by a standard physician, that is keeping me abreast of all the research that's coming out that is unique or that applies to me. It's going to know my DNA. It's going to know my microbiome. So it will have a better understanding of how someone with my makeup is going to metabolize a given drug. And so is there a trial or something that I should be going after? I think that will be huge. I think the mental health crisis is absolutely massive. And I think being able to help with that, I think AI is going to be tremendously advantageous, because here's how I see it working. You're going to be wearing devices that are taking an objective snapshot of your real-time physiology. So where's your heart rate? It will detect a spike in anxiety. How well are you sleeping? What's your blood oxygen level? All things that we can read already, but it's just so much data. It becomes very difficult to correlate to a thing I just did, or something that I saw or encountered, or what I ate, which will be a huge part of this. And it's tracking this just incredibly multivariate thing and saying, oh, right now you just encountered this thing. It's triggering a stress response. You need to relax. Or, hey, you've been relaxing too much. You need to push yourself. Given the patterns that we've seen on the days you're more active, or the days where your anxiety is lower, your depression is lower, whatever, and use the biofeedback as a way to get out of sort of the, talk to me about it. Because I think that talk to me about it, there's some question marks around how helpful that is, depending on how your therapist is running the session. So therapy is one of those things I think can go very right, and I think it can go very wrong. So if we introduce the biological data into that feedback loop, I think things get a lot better. And then education, again, you've already talked us through that, but that one-to-one curriculum I think is incredibly important. And your AI being able to flag for you where you're at. Are you ahead? Are you behind? You've told it the things that you want to optimize for in your life. And it's like, well, you say you want to optimize for that, but you're doing these things that don't really align with your goals. What if you took this course, whatever? And then the last one is, and this might be the most important, is all throughout history, every time that you get into a very concentrated urban area, which you can read as a proxy for safety, stability in society, the whole strong men make good times make weak men, that whole cycle, population declines. That's not only a modern phenomena. That's happened over and over and over. And when you look at the different population collapses, they've always been tied to a precipitous drop in birth rate, which obviously we're seeing now, just rapid beyond all measure. especially in South Korea, Japan. America's not doing great, not doing it as badly, but you're seeing it in a lot of places. Now, my hope with the population collapse is that one, just that AI can do all the things with health, read into goals in terms of helping steer people's behavior so that they want to have children, that they can be on that track, that the AI can help them not be 36 and suddenly realize they want to do it, but be advising them much earlier. But possibly more important, and I'd love to get your take on this very specifically, is robotics. And that as we get this upside down pyramid of a ton of old people and not nearly enough young people to support them, that robots or embodied AI, if you will, which is another way of saying robots, will be able to step in and take care of that burden so that not all bright minds of the young generation are sucked into elder care. What do you think about that? Is that any of that Pollyanna, or does that not true?
I think they're all reasonable. Like, I think the mental health one is a particularly interesting one because there's your biomarkers, but it's also your voice. You know, you can tell a lot from a person by the way they're speaking and just picking up on that. And again, that's what a good therapist can do. The AI can do that even better now. We've seen some research that'll be coming out soon about that, being able to pick up the timbre and also respond with the correct voice. Like, there's a bit of a Black Mirror-ish thing I've been thinking about recently, you know, whereby this is the BBC show about dystopian views of the future. I'm not sure this is a good thing or bad thing. I'm not sure we discussed it before. Given a few hours of discussion with someone, I can recreate a perfect clone of them in terms of voice reaction. You can WhatsApp them, you can call them, you can even have Zooms with them now live, and you won't be able to tell. That sounds creepy, but what if it is a loved one that's about to pass away? You know, your grandma, someone that you trust, who's always looked out for you. Then imagine that person being with you throughout and supporting you. Now, that's simultaneously horrifying and slightly comforting, but it gives you an idea of kind of the stuff that is now possible. Because like I said, you can Zoom with them, you can text them, you can call them. Maybe one day there'll be a robot. Is that positive for mental health or negative? It can be, again, be both ways. This is a dual technology, right? But I think it reflects the fact that the AIs that are coming, there's the classical big data, and we have this measured life with our Fitbits and all of that, right? And a lot of these healthcare things are like dashboard based. I can measure this, and some of our brains are set for that. But then there's nothing like someone next to us telling us you're doing okay, or, you know, shape up. And we will put so much trust in these AIs that are next to us, because we have to remember as well, you know, this isn't a knock. Like, when you look at the distribution of intelligence, with intelligence is coming into the community now, right? They were building artificial intelligences. Half of America, half of the world's under 100 on IQ. That's just the way it is. Because it's a normal distribution, right?
Youch.
Now, 95% of people think they're above average IQ. You know, and in places where there's malnutrition, it can be as low as 80 on average for nations. US states go from 95 to 105 on average. But if you think about that, like, many of us technologists, we build for like people who've had very privileged lives and we live in bubbles, right? But if you think about 10, 20, 30 years from now, and many of these things, it's like people didn't have the opportunity, didn't have the chance, they've had malnutrition, kind of bad backgrounds, or they're just flooded with junk they don't believe. All of a sudden, like, I think Anthropic did an IQ test on Claude, it hit 100. But then it will also, again, be able to speak to you in the most comforting voice in the world, or tell you that you need to shape up, or these other things. And so again, when I think of mental health, I see this range of things, from recreating your grandma before they pass away so you can always get their wisdom, to, I don't know, like Aristotle, who just your own personality that grows with you. And I don't think we've never even been able to explore or conceive that technology, right? But again, I know if someone I trust tells me to do something, I want to work hard for them. And that's the most difficult thing. Again, not these dashboards and these big data kind of things. It works for certain quantified minds, but nothing kind of beats that kind word, you know, at the right time. So this is why I think it will be huge for mental health, for kind of feedback loops. it could also be incredibly dangerous, but again, we're doing the positive side of things. There aren't enough people to support people. That's why, like I said, something like, a loved one had a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And so for a week, I thought she was going to die. 1,000 AI just analyze everything. Pancreatic cancer is a 5% survival rate, right? And it turned out to be a misdiagnosis after we did all the analysis. But think about everyone who gets diagnosed with that, the loss of agency they feel. There's not enough humans in the world to support appropriately. But it should be a combination of the AIs helping and bringing the right humans to support you as well, because again, nothing beats real world contact. Until you have robots. I think, again, the embodied AIs. The pace of robotics has leapfrogged in the last year or two. There's a company in China called Unitree. They have a robot called the G1. Have you seen that one?
No.
So the G1 is 5'2", 34 kilograms, and can run at 4 miles per hour. It can make you an omelet, and it's got reinforcement learning. So if one robot learns Kung Fu, the other robots can learn Kung Fu as well. And it's $16,000. So you can look it up, the Unitree G1. Elon Musk reckons the Tesla Optimus will be $10,000 to $20,000. I reckon it will be as well. And so right now they look a bit weird, but again, they'll look more and more human. They'll be able to speak human, because I think you don't want to get this uncanny valley thing where you've got this plastic face. But again, we respond a lot to voice. Now you look at AI voices now, they're perfect, right? But you can't tell anymore with 11 Labs and HeyGen and other things like that. Again, you can have your voice in 20, 30, 40 languages now, your voice, but in Spanish. So when I look at that, I'm like, it's not this Blade Runner future where it's kind of fleshbots and everything. I just think, again, robots will be there alongside us. But there is a difference, again, with this embodiedness. Just like, we like our dogs and the kind of things like that. But all of a sudden, they've got a level of engagement. Is it sentience as AGI? No. But again, they're there and they can communicate with you. They can be your barista. They can do that. They can do that. And you said this kind of fixes the population pyramid. And it's very interesting that the place that will make the most robots is China, right? Which has
why do you think they'll make the most?
27% of the Chinese economy is industry. Apart from they're the biggest industrial producer in the world, where do most of the cars in the world come from, right? There's 80 million cars and 70 million motorcycles built a year. In a few years, I'm pretty sure the number of robots will get up to 100 million a year. Again, it's $10,000, $20,000. Let's put it in another context. When you look at the cost of, you can look at like buying a car. If you buy a $10,000 car, how much does it cost to lease a month? Like $100?
It's about
For
right.
$100, you will have a 5'6" robot that can make you omelets, or look at a recipe and then make it instantly. That can learn from other robots. That has fine grained control. Like again, when you look at the Unitree G1, it's got a Coke bottle, it flips its finger and the Coke bottle tap goes off, That's the level of control we've got now. So these will be useful, and we're seeing studies whereby, robots and personal assistants help the elderly. Like, how much does the US spend on elder care versus childcare? A lot more already. And they said this is coming. We want to increase the population. I think, we've seen the studies around lack of testosterone. We've seen the studies around the hygiene factors of people not wanting to have kids because they can't be sure about the future, want to bring them. But, it's positive to have this, but we need help. Yeah. And so if we can't find the human help, we need to have digital help. And that's again, digital help that can talk to us on our level and understand us better than anyone. And that's why we need to make sure that's aligned. It's physical help, the embodied help around you that can help you physically with doing all the tasks you might need, but then also like going beyond that. And again, there's a shocking thing around the cost of all of this, right? Like, it's $8 a month for Grok on X. And that includes a subscription to make as many images as you want and edit them. And an AI that's like OpenAI level. You would have thought it'd be that cheap, We're talking $100 a month to lease a robot that can maybe do 95% of what a human can do. Who would have thought it'd be that cheap? And so again, it opens up this massive world of support whereby you can have as much support as you need, because you're not limited. Like, if I want to go and hire that personal trainer, it costs how much, right? Human personal trainer will still be good, but then the availability of therapists, personal trainers, waiters, other things goes up dramatically. And again, there are negatives to that, and there needs to be an economic response. But for many things, it is also a positive. What do you think again about, I think, the hygiene factors of humanity, the living factors? And, then you've got the flourishing factors, right? If we can get the economy right, if we can get meaning right, and some of these other things.
So, how are entrepreneurs going to use this? I know a lot of young people, beginning entrepreneurs, they're going to want to know how they leverage this to their advantage. Is there an opportunity for wealth creation? Is this just going to come at all at once that there'll be no competitive advantage? Or is there a window here where people can take advantage of this?
So, I started out as a programmer 23 years ago. I was writing directly assembler code, so directly almost to the hardware. Then programming became about these bundle libraries of like, this is how you make an iPhone app, a template, things like that. You built up levels from that. Still, when you look at the banking system, it runs on COBOL and Fortran, which I believe were made in the 1960s. Stuff takes time to upgrade. People don't want to include what are basically research models, because this is still research, not engineering, a lot of AI. Cutting edge stuff. You don't want cutting edge for your education, your healthcare, your critical systems. You want stuff that's tried and tested. But like I said, this will be both longer and quicker than we expect. Quicker because we're already seeing it appear and it just seamlessly goes in and breaks down these barriers. Longer because it's not going to go everywhere in society all at once. Because again, you can't take the risk. You can't blame the AI, right? But that transformation, we remember the dot-com transformation. We remember many of these transformations. Just embracing this technology, using this technology, and helping people with that is an amazing business. Doesn't matter which sector you're in. Again, the mental model is, we wrote this piece, How to Think About AI, where we go through some of these. We were like, think about it like you've discovered this new continent of graduates that are specializing, and how are you going to deploy that to your personal life, your company, country, whatever, but your company. Because it's so hard to find good people. Think about things in terms of flows, not files. So right now we're outputting image or a text, but eventually multi-step, like that whole process of writing a report and getting all the information in multiple steps will all be captured that flow. Or in images and video, we have this system called Comfy UI that we built at Stability AI, which I left a little while ago, a former company, whereby when you input a prompt, it captures it, but then every single edit to that prompt that you do and every single additional model you use for upscaling, and then if I send you that file, it reconstructs the whole flow. So files to flows. And the final kind of point we make, and again, there's a lot more to it, you can check it out on our Twitter Substack, is just you're moving from thinking about the world in terms of these autonomous agents that will just get rid of all human endeavor to how can we make people more agentic. So if you're an entrepreneur, the best thing to do is like, how can I help my customer? Well, all businesses are, the cost is less than the value created. So it's all about how can I help my customer achieve more? How could I do it myself? We're already seeing many of these startups that I'm seeing and small companies. They don't need to hire as many people for content creation as they used to before. They're using some basic agent-based systems. They're using basic AI to be able to iterate and develop faster. Because I think there is a increase in reach. So again, systems like HeyGen, like 11 Labs, any podcast you do is you can make in how many languages you want, right? That's an instant increase in reach. Who knows? Maybe this will be popular in India or China or wherever, right? There's an increase in velocity, so ideation. Again, for entrepreneurs, that's incredibly powerful because you can give it something like a Claude, a set of principles, like this is my idea for a business, and you analyze it according to Porter's 5 forces. Or, hey, you're a Stanford MBA or Harvard MBA. Can you break it down for me? And then you can interrogate it and it'll just go back at you. So the ideation phase is important. What could go wrong with this idea? I'm having a problem. Like, again, just having a buddy that kind of gets you. And then there's a cost decrease side, things that you classically employed had to find people for, which is the most hard thing when you're an entrepreneur because you're unproven. You can offload a lot of that to the AI or to people that use AI, which I think is more important. And so, that helps have more generalists, I think. And again, time to market, market size, access, and then quality of service.
All right, walk me through how this is actually going to happen. So when I think about these potential employees for somebody that wants to use AI, let's say you're going to staff your company up with 8 to 10 people, all of them being AI, but you're going to want them theoretically to specialize. So will it be just one AI is capable of going in any direction? So you just take off the shelf 9 or 10 generic AIs and then you say, you're in charge of this? Or is it one AI and you just say, okay, do this task in this way, do this task in this way, so on and so forth?
So we built the first models for creation, and again, we've got to human level in these narrow fields. Now we're creating these flows and design patterns of jobs. So you've got your liberal arts grad, and now they're specializing. So off the shelf now, you look at something like Intercom, right, which many of us have used for the chat responses, the help side, that thing on the bottom right that you click on and then you can chat. Intercom have changed their business model, introducing AI now. So they have an AI agent that looks at all your previous answers, and you actually only pay Intercom for every resolved query. It's not even a subscription service anymore. I think it's just fascinating. But you're seeing call center work AIs come now that, again, can be your entire customer support. But when I say entire, I don't actually mean entire, because a much better system is that you need to have a manager for the AIs. We haven't developed the AI manager yet. So one person managing all these AIs, and again, I think they're getting increasingly customized, is quite a lot. But it doesn't mean that you can't have someone that you say, solve the problem of customer service for my product. And then you don't need to hire all these customer service reps. And you've actually got better outcomes according to the data that's been coming out already. You've got your sales outreach and your sales calls, and that can be massively automated now. The services are popping out for that, including engaging. You don't know it's an AI effectively. Whereas previously you had to hire how many sales reps for a lot of these things. Advertising, SEO, design, you can expect a lot more from your designers now. Like there's a minimum level of quality that's going up. But again, the designer is probably going to be managing a series of AIs. So I think that we're moving up the level now from these generalized models to these more specialized services. But if you still need to have your managers, I think, managing these services. And again, a human in the loop just to check because they're not quite good enough. They'll break through to good enough. But again, the most difficult thing as an entrepreneur, as someone trying to make a difference, is hiring the right people to support you in these functions as you yourself move from a generalist to specialist, building a team. And these AIs and these systems have flaws and issues, which I think you still need human in the loop, but they're improving fast. So again, I think that's the mental model that you need to have when approaching this. What are the functional components of my business? And which of these services can I introduce to have cheaper cost, better experience, faster iteration, right? And that differs area to area.
If I think about this as an entrepreneur, the thing that immediately jumps to mind is if these are all pre-made, I'm not going to have an advantage. You're going to help me lower my cost of doing a thing that I need to do. So take customer service. If I'm the only one with a customer service AI and it delivers better results, I'm in a great position. If we all have customer service AI, now it's neutral again, unless I have control over the knobs that allow me to make my AI customer service better. So take culture. I can inject culture into my AI and have a competitive advantage over my competitors just because they don't. For instance, back at Quest, we used to say, if you called us up and said, hey, I really want to get in shape, what should I eat? We would say chicken breast and broccoli. Now, that was like, at the time, everyone just thought that was crazy, but it was this, I won't say viral thing, but it definitely caught on. People were talking about it because we didn't promote our own product. We told people, look, we know where we fit in the dietary ecosystem. You're better off eating whole food whenever you can. But if you want to snack, then by all means, have one of our bars. And so that mentality was an advantage. But if I'm stuck with an agent that just handles things in sort of a generic way, I'm trapped. When will that level of control be available where I can take something off the shelf so I don't have to create it, but I can dial the knobs in a way that's unique only to me?
It's available right now. Again, these are like I said, liberal arts grads, shall we say. They have a wide range. But there's something called a context window. So that's the prompt that you type in. Most people will only type in like 50, 100 words. OpenAI ChatGPT, when it first came out, could take 2,000 words. Google's latest models can take 2 million words.
Whoa.
Or videos or audio all at once. So you could inject entire training courses and your company Bible and talks that you've given about your company culture and like sessions. And it will, at inference time, the time when it runs and responds, assimilate all of that. And that's crazy, right? Like, again, you created a culture guide for your company. You can put that in the prompt. You don't need to fine tune a model even. So the fine tuning is when you put it in the model permanently. And again, like to give you an idea now where the costs have gone, they've dropped like probably 500 times. The latest Gemini Flash model is, I think, 15 cents for 1 million words of output, and fine tuning is free. Previously, it was like $150.
Whoa.
So, and again, you can have your entire culture handbook in there. So, like customer service, again, it depends. Is this a distributional thing or is it a cost, right? And so, businesses are repeatable processes. And like, were you the first energy bar in the market? You know, like I buy bottled water. There are many intangibles around brand, around classical product that once you really understand where your cost, your distribution base is, and these other things, that's where you apply the AI. And again, where is your edge? Your edge is ultimately in your engagement with the people that think you're giving value and are paying for that, whatever that might be. You know, like Clayton Christensen, I departed Harvard Business School professor, came with disruptive innovation, had this jobs to be done model where he said any product is part of a job to be done. The McDonald's milkshake in the morning is quite thick because you're drinking it on the way to work in your car in America. Whereas in the afternoon, they make it thin and runny because your kid's drinking it and you don't want them to be sucking on it for too long, you know? But he said that there's a functional, a social, and an emotional component to any of these. So again, as we look at the classical business theory and what's worked, it hasn't changed. It's just that we've got a new workforce. And the workforce listens to instructions. But how many people on this call have realized, this podcast, listening to it, have realized that you can give 30,000 words of instruction to a chat GPT, that you should treat it just like a new hire. You can list out all the instructions and it'll follow them, you know? Instead, they just type in little bits and they're just like, oh, why isn't it consistent in its response, right?
Now, if you give it the consistent context, will it give you the same output every time?
You can make it give you exactly the same output every time. So OpenAI just released this feature called JSON output, which is structured data, 100% reliable output, for example. So
Wow.
again, that used to be 60% at the start of the year. Now you're like,
yeah. Was very inconsistent at the beginning. Same with the image creation. Okay, so we've got a lot of cool things going on at the AI level. A lot of it feels like it's not quite here, but if I lean into things that aren't quite here, but that seem like they're coming around the corner, Elon Musk, with what he's doing with Neuralink, I believe they already have 2 human patients. When I look at the future of AI, it seems inevitable to me that to keep up with AI, especially as it becomes embodied, we are going to have a choice. And I think to not end up in a position where you have something that just so outstrips your intelligence, your ability to communicate, your ability to perceive the world. I mean, just absolutely get left in the dust, no longer the dominant species on the planet. You're going to have to consider augmentation. What do you think about what's going on at Neuralink? Could you see yourself in the future embracing it?
Our phones are on Neuralink at the moment. So the whole concept of Neuralink was that, you know, we're having a discussion right now, we're exchanging information, but it's like that much information. What if I could jack myself in and just almost communicate seamlessly all of the context at all times? You would have better input and output. And again, you said that's how you can compete with these AIs, because an AI that can accept 1,000 words of instruction is kind of human, right? An AI that can accept 2 million words of instruction, that's something we've never seen before, because you look at the thing, it's got like 99% accuracy as well. And again, to give you some context on this, you can upload an entire season of a TV show and ask it to pull out the funniest parts where your humor is defined by Seinfeld, relevant to that. And it will do that in one go. A human could not do that, right? Without weeks of effort. You can do your entire code base and show yourself debugging it, a video, and it will interpolate all of that. So when we look at that level of information, bandwidth, is one of the key components of Neuralink. Right now, it's being used for people that are having issues conveying information to their arms, their legs, getting out there because they're paralyzed, etc. But we're all kind of paralyzed in the information we input, we output, and by our own, I think Elon refers to it as limbic systems. We get in our own way a lot. Come on, how many of you are so kind of at achieving our potential? So having a self-regulating system, does it need to be invasive? Maybe, maybe not. It's going to be insane. The example I gave earlier was the voice kind of talking to you into your earpods as an example. But what if it's directly into you? It's standardized. We're wearing glasses. We will have augmented glasses from Meta coming soon that kind of do that. I don't know if you've got the Meta Ray Bans. They're kind of cool. You can record everything as you go, but now you'll have the display coming up. Again, our phones are augmenting. I think it will be a number of years for various safety reasons and others. I don't think we need it to compete with the AIs, but again, we're moving into this world where a person with a phone is going to outcompete someone without a phone. It'd be like saying, I don't want internet. And again, it's an information bandwidth and information customization thing, just like Twitter and TikTok are optimized for a phone. You'll have information that's optimized for brain-computer interfaces. And maybe the first step of that is the voice in your ear, customizing to exactly what you want to hear in the way that you want to hear it.
Do you have a base assumption about how humans and AI will interact that makes you say that we won't necessarily need brain-computer interface to compete with AI? Because that seems self-evident to me, that we either have an AI that's treating us kindly and just telling us everything that we want, but we are very much beneath them on the intellectual food chain, or we augment. Other than genetic engineering, I don't see a way around the truth of that statement.
Well, it's like saying that, we can't outcompete smarter people than us. So there's people smarter than you and I, right? The people more accomplished than you and I. I think they're just citizens in society.
How dare you, Emad?
Not as charming, Tom. Not as charming. As smart.
Obviously not.
Yeah, but look, I think, again, my base assumption is this will be augmenting technology. The ASI, artificial superintelligence debate, is kind of a different one. And again, you view it differently in different parts of the world where, someone like Japan, it's very much AIs alongside humans. In the US, it tends to be more this AGI, AI God concept, and what's it going to do? And we can't tell because we can't conceive something that's that much smarter than us, But the question is, do we need to compete? And that again comes back to how will you measure your life and what is you believe in? I mentioned earlier, how many people listening to this podcast believe in the American dream or the British dream or the French dream anymore? What the governments have kind of promised us. What is your goal in life? Some people it's faith. Some people it's patriotism. Some people want to build a business, get money. Do you need to be plugged in to compete if you can have the AIs working with you, for you? Maybe you work for that. I'm not sure. Again, most people are just happy being day to day. And they just want to be happier within their individual context. They don't want to break the ceiling and achieve massive, great things, And so that's why I said, maybe we do need a few people that are jacked in, like overseers or something like that. Maybe we will end up like the Borg, but happier, hopefully, Because I think the Borg are one of the main examples of this collective intelligence. Because it's very doubtful that it will be individual intelligences, right? If we're jacked in, we're all jacked into the internet already. On our social media, we've created some sort of weird hive mind with memes on there. With neural computer interface, it'll be even worse. But again, maybe it can damp our limbic systems, which cause us to do stupid things. But we're just not sure. So I think, what I focused on, given the uncertainty, is just let's make sure the technology is as widely available, distributed, and understandable as possible. This is why I push open source AI. by push governance and some of these other things, versus being controlled by a few people. Because what I do know is it's incredibly persuasive, and if it's just a few entities having access to this technology, it feels kind of undemocratic, given it will affect us all. Yeah. I think that the brain-computer interface stuff is still a number of years away, invasive, non-invasive. But we're going to have plenty of examples of it influencing us on this individualized level again, just even via our AirPods, way before that.
Okay, so I'll take exception to the way that you're painting human nature. I don't think the average person is happy. I think by nature, humans are a creature of pursuit. I think we are just unrelenting wanting machines. And we seek status. And so given that we are an unrelenting wanting machine who seeks status, if we give birth to something that isn't like, okay, look, there are people way smarter than me. And if I'm honest, that bothers me. And if I had a solution, I would take advantage of it. Now, the people that are smarter than me are, I ran the math one time, and I think Einstein was 2.6 times, this is roughly correct, if not exactly, 2.6 times somebody who meets the literal definition of a moron. Okay, fair enough. But once that person is 100 times smarter than you, 100,000 times smarter than you, 1,000,000 times smarter than you, all of a sudden that's not as fun anymore. And so do you really think that people won't augment themselves to keep up specifically?
I don't think most people are happy. I think they're not content, but again, they're just in their cycle, shall we say. But let's take an example, maybe steroids. Steroids allow you to jack up very quickly. There are side effects. There'll probably be side effects to neural computer interfaces at the start. Not everyone that works out takes steroids, even though you go to the gym and there's all these buff people there, right? I think it depends on societal acceptance. It depends on, again, what you want to do day to day. There are still people that issue, like, they don't watch Netflix. They don't kind of do this kind of stuff. They are not that competitive. The people that are competitive will want to compete, and they'll want every single advantage they could have. But again, I think that you're at the top end of competitive relative, again, to the vast mass of people out there. So there is this picture of which all of humanity is upgraded with neural computer interfaces. Maybe it's the Matrix one, it's a Borg one. There aren't that many positive versions of that, right? That I can think of. But again, like I said, for me, your iPhone is the first step of that, right? These are our digital assistants. They are our brain-computer interfaces. The information is customized to us. But my guess is that, again, this will be a slow thing as opposed to a mass adoption thing where everyone's like, oh, I must compete with this artificial superintelligence. In fact, I think what's going to end up happening is most people will welcome being all watched over by machines of loving grace, shall we say. Like, you look at senatorial confidence levels, I think it's like around cockroach or something like that. Not saying individual senators aren't great, please don't pull me up. But we don't have faith in our politicians anymore. We'd probably rather most people have AI systems, And again, this is part of the issue that we'll be entrusting these systems a lot. I don't mind smarter people looking after me, shall we say. And if you look 100 years out, shall we say, like, that's way beyond, I'm just picking this, I can't see more than 10, 20. Of course AI is going to run everything. What that looks like, I don't know. But it'll definitely be able to run various things better than we can. And what does that look like? Is it an ASI? Is it individual? There's probably going to be some level of human input, just because, just like you listen to people anyway, even if they say crap in your organization, even if you make decisions. I just don't think it'll be, like I said, this mass Borg type thing with everyone competing to be at the top. But then maybe that's kind of British, not American as well.
It's interesting. Yeah, I am definitely far more competitive. And so this could just be me projecting. But when I look at, if you create an opportunity for something to be exploited, humans will exploit it. Now, you could be right that 98% of people don't exploit it, but it will be exploited, even if it's only by the 2%. And then suddenly you create this ever escalating arms race. All right, before we get to that, though, let me ask.
There's one more final thing I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
When we talk about intelligence being 10, 100 times larger, we don't know if intelligence can scale. Like maybe it's just an S curve and you get up to like 300 and then it flattens out. But it's probably going to be less about intelligence, more about not making mistakes. You and I both know incredibly smart people, and they tend to be a bit unstable. As we get smarter at the edges, we get more unstable. And there's actually many studies kind of showing that. Just not making mistakes will make people far more effective than anything. Like, how many times has everyone on listening to this sabotage themselves, right? Or made an emotional decision? And I will never have to make an emotional decision. And so maybe, is that intelligence though? Or is it execution? So maybe the intelligence flattens out. Like already we're seeing saturation of these models in terms of capabilities, training on ever more data with 10, 100 times, 1,000 times more compute. But maybe execution, you'll never be able to beat an AI in execution and reliability. I think that's what you really want for yourself. Like you want to have all the information and the increased bandwidth, but you don't want to make the mistakes. And again, you want to learn from your mistakes. But you never kick yourself saying, well, I did that because I was scared, or I did that because of this. No, you're like, I did this completely rationally and I'm executing like a goddamn king. Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing, even if all AI does is have that ability to be consistent, to track their results, to take in more points of data than humans, they'll be able to do something that I call the physics of progress way better than humans. So I think that there is simply a way that progress happens that AI is just going to be an ungodly force at. You come up with a hypothesis on how you think you move towards your goal. You create the test that you're going to run to see whether that hypothesis is correct. You identify a metric that you think will improve in a very concrete term. You run the test and you assess the data to see, did I actually make a meaningful move towards that, yes or no? If yes, cool, keep doing more of that. If no, then reformulate a hypothesis now with new data point. And that's it. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. You're trying to improve your health. You're trying to be a better parent. You're trying to run a business. That is literally the physics of how you get ahead at something. And the problem I find with humans in that phase is they will often feel like a test is going to work. And so when they run the test, they don't set a metric ahead of time that they think will be influenced. And so no matter what result they get, they're like, yeah, that's what I was expecting. So it's like, cool, the test was a success without really looking whether they made progress to their goal or not. Or they lie to themselves. This wasn't a poorly executed or poorly framed test. This was some external thing that stopped me and it would have otherwise worked. And that's one of the ways that I think AI can create this just incredible momentum by, again, being able to take in way more data, always assessing the situation as accurately as it can be assessed, and then adjusting accordingly.
And again, this is kind of, if you treat it like a sparring buddy and you get it to check your output according to the rules you've set yourself, that'll be the most effective use of this AI at this moment in time. We need self-regulation. We break our habits all the time. And so this is why, like, again, it's execution machine. Like, what we describe is the OODA loop in military terms, right? Observe, orient, decide, and act. Because you don't know kind of where you're going. But then once it comes to that, it becomes about execution. And am I following through with what I said? And I'm just keeping on top of this. Is everyone doing their job on their part? The AI will not drop something. It won't get tired or lazy or forget to file something. But again, as you get to swarms of AI with coordinators, you can't beat an AI in execution. You can't beat a robot in execution. So I think that, again, the act of intelligence has been somewhat conflated by this whole AGI discussion, where we're like trying to conceive of this super genius breakthrough stuff. But most of the world can just be changed through rigorous execution. In fact, that's how the best companies are, right? They're machines where everyone knows their parts, how the best teams work. Like, if you've got a good functioning team, the sum is greater than the whole individual parts, right? Again, I think it's the same with AI. So maybe I think that's where you'll feel the most competitive pressure, honestly. It won't be the case of the AI is a genius, so I must be a genius. It will be, I want to achieve to my best potential, like Limitless style, right? Like that movie with Bradley Cooper. And I want to suppress the stuff that gets in the way on demand. It's still being human, that stuff. But again, this is what meditation is. This is what, again, life learning is. This is what building our mental systems are. It's just difficult to keep to them until now.
If you had to place a bet, is intelligence going to hit the S curve and stall out?
I think so.
Where do you think it stalls out at?
On IQ basis, like 300, 250 probably, 300, I imagine.
Okay, so right now we're at, you said roughly 100 for Claude when it took it 3x from here. Einstein was, if I'm not mistaken, 260 or 265.
I think probably 200 on the standardized one. But yeah, maybe above that. So kind of above Einstein.
But you think it'll be substantively smarter than Einstein?
I think I'd be smarter than Einstein, definitely. Einstein made lots of mistakes. Again, he's human, right? But again, it isn't inconceivable for an AI to be as smart as the smartest human, but you don't need to be smart all the time, right? Like, when we're talking about Einstein, we're talking about his ability to synthesize and make breakthroughs. But how many breakthroughs did he make during his life, or Euler, or any of these other prodigies? We're talking dozens, not thousands or millions. And again, we're thinking about this giant embodied AI that's trained on 1 million GPUs, when really, again, how many breakthroughs do we need to change the world? We need no breakthroughs to change the world. We actually know what needs to be done to change the world. You don't need any more intelligence than you have here. You need execution capabilities, right? When it comes to intelligence, what are those breakthroughs going to be in? You know, there's the competitive zero-sum kind of thing, which is I have a business insight and then I go towards it. But usually business insights are resource constrained, right? Can I get the, like, how much competition is there for hot tubs in your area or flooring? There'll only ever be a few people and it's a very localized thing. It'll always be a decent business, right? Unless you're massive economic collapse. But you get what I mean, right? So there's always these pockets of value that you can find. But these discussions of AGI are like this giant godlike AI that will have constant flashes of brilliance all the time. I just don't think that doesn't kind of sync with me. But being able to burst to be as smart as the smartest human, yeah. But then being better in things like these massive context length windows, in rigorous execution, in ability to observe objectively or intuit. Actually, I think AIs will have very good intuition. Something we can kind of talk about, because the previous generation.
Explain that, because I don't understand how an AI is going to develop intuition.
So the previous generation of AI was big data, massive amounts of data and extrapolation, right? This new generation of AI doesn't do that. You don't need these giant mainframes. We take huge amounts of data. So something like GPT-4 is probably 10 trillion words. And the model itself is probably 20 gigabytes, which is smaller than the archive of Wikipedia, which is something like 10 million words. It's insane. What it does is it figures out the commonalities and principles and context. So when you put an essay there, like your quarterly review for your investors, right? And you say, make this a rap in the style of 80s school hip hop, Tupac Shakur style, whatever. And it will write it. And you've seen that, right? It just does it instantly. Yeah. How does it know that? It guesses the next word based on the context of a Tupac and 80s hip hop, rock, this, that. Because it's embedded the context of all of these and the meaning of it. So like when you put the word cup in an image generator, it's like there's cup your ears, cup your hands. And you can see with the real-time ones now, because you can generate in real time with some of them, how the image changes dynamically. When you say cup your hands, it will do like that. Or cup of water, it'll do the cup of water. And you can see this in things like, so what it is understands context. What do we do when we intuit? We've built our mental models and we understand context. There's a practical example of this. Tesla self-driving. Tesla self-driving used to be 300,000 lines of code. Now it's one of these, what's called diffusion models. So that's the same technology we used when we built the stable diffusion system that, revolutionized the text to image generation. And it's used now in these video models too, where basically you take an image or a video or whatever, or like a video of you driving, like from the Tesla cameras, you destroy it down to its smallest part using a physics-based process, and then you reconstruct it and figure out how that process of reconstruction occurs. And in that, you understand the context. So what Tesla self-driving is basically doing is it's guessing what's coming next. It's intuiting.
Why do you call it intuiting? So here's how I hold in my head what AI is doing. It simply has been trained on so many patterns. It simply says, when you say Tupac and rap, I now create a subset in a database, essentially. And now I know, okay, what are the patterns within this now limited source of my grand set of data? Cool, here are the patterns. And now I will just guess the most likely token that follows that one. And so it looks like it's coming up with words or intuiting something, but in reality, it's just saying, oh, you want me to find the patterns in this subset of data. Here they are. And so that hearing you talk about this, it sounds like, and now I'm going to put words in your mouth, and so push back and tell me this doesn't make any sense. But if I lead with, oh, Emad thinks that AI is conscious, then, oh, okay, you think that it has a subconscious process, which is how I would define intuition. Intuition to me is an embodied, literally below the conscious mind sense of, ooh, some parts of my body have picked up on a pattern that I have not consciously picked up on. That does not seem analogous to what's happening with AI to me.
Well, I think AI is subconscious, but it's not conscious. So when you look at an AI model, again, what is a model? It is a file, like an MP3 or MP4 or whatever, like a photo. There is no logical process of code, if this, then that. It's like a sieve. We push words in, we get an image out. So if you look at exactly the data that you would have to make an intuition that isn't involving your higher cortex, your chain of thought reasoning brain, and you look at an AI, as it stands as generative AI, generative AI is doing the intuition. It's doing, it's type 1 versus type 2 thinking that Kahneman, a psychologist who very famous just passed, who did this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. One type of thinking is my very logical thinking,
That's slow.
Thought reasoning. Yeah.
Fast is intuition, slow is logic.
There's a freaking, tiger in the wood. I see that small outline, right? Or I think I intuit that this is probably the most likely way to go forward based on all my experience and my training. So you can take a model and you can like a generalized driving model, and you can train it on Nepal roads, and then it will get better at driving on Nepal roads. And for me, that's a type of, again, subconscious intuition where it's guessing based on context the next thing. And again, you can fit the context window with as much information as you would have when making an intuition. But the AI is probably going to intuit better than you. Like, I kind of know what a Barbie Oppenheimer movie poster will look like. Just go to Grok right now and you type in Barbie Oppenheimer poster, it'll make one, right? But that isn't a conscious chain of thought reasoning decision. It is a string of words, Barbie Oppenheimer poster by Paramount, going into this blob of weights, the blob of ones and zeros, this MP3 file, this picture file. And then out the other side is generated an image. It's not doing any logical thinking. Now, within that, there are weights and there's balances and probabilities, right? But again, it's not looking up a database or a structure or creating anything intermediate. And that's just like, again, our brains where we build up our neural networks and we can have information coming in this fast thinking and then intuit what kind of comes next. So you can just respond, react. And that's why self-driving works. And again, Tesla self-driving uses this technology. It's kind of guessing what's coming next. And in some studies, again, it's outperforming human drivers. And you know the driver sense that you have when you're spotting something. There was a study done recently that showed that we can detect now breast cancer 5 years before it occurs. And you think about a top radiologist, they say, I think something's wrong, and they'll dig and they'll do that. AI can just do that now. So I would say that all AI is doing now is fast thinking, and that's why one of the biggest challenges now and why we're introducing new technology is actually the slow thinking. And the AI is so fast that we haven't slowed down. So as you get to customer service agents and all this other stuff and these flows I'm talking about, that's where chain of thought reasoning and other things are actually active research topics. We're trying to figure out how to make it less intuitive, slower, ironically, and more thorough in its thinking. So if we can combine the two, what do we have?
Yeah, that will be extremely interesting to see. if those problems can be solved. Now, is that key to your thinking on how we get 3x smarter AI than where we are now? And if so, how do we train it? Like, what if we've already run through everything that's available on the internet? How do we actually make this thing 3x smarter?
Well, we're training it on junk still. So the internet is junk. Right now, we've seen some studies like there's this Microsoft model called Phi, where we just generated textbooks and we just fed it with textbooks. But then when we added a sample of the snapshot of the internet, the performance got better. And for me, that's a bit like, well, it's a bookworm versus someone who lives in the real world, right? Like, have you ever trained on textbooks? But we don't know the food that these AIs need. But we're getting better at understanding that. So when we made Stable Diffusion, we did 2 billion images. We took a snapshot of the internet, 2 billion images. We excluded watermarked images and Getty and all that. And someone achieved the same performance on 25 million images. From seeing which parts of the neural network got lit up by the most common queries. You could throw out 99% of the data. And again, if you think of it like a liberal arts grad, what's the curriculum? We need to feed it better data, and then it'll get better. But then what's the feedback loops for it to recursively self-improve? So Apple Intelligence is just derived from your smartphone. With Apple Intelligence now, it's a 3 billion parameters, so like probably FP4, 2 to 3 gigabyte file. And then it has these adapters called LoRa's for individual topic areas. So it's got a generalized intelligence and specific areas of intelligence for like note taking and other things. And it swaps out like the training courses for the AI. So the AI kind of switches that out. Soon it will have the ability to recursively self-learn and adapt to you. So it will be able to train on device based on its understanding of you. Just like you go to some of these image sites and then you can train your face in and hey, you got a Tom model, and now you're an astronaut and you're a dog and whatever, right? So the next step is we go from these base models that intuit to recursive fine-tuning, adaptation, increasing automatic generation of context, which is the instructions. And then what's happening now in the AI sphere, there's this massive focus on what's known as Monte Carlo tree search or agentic AI. So Monte Carlo tree search is the type of AI that was used to have an AI that could beat humans at Dota 2 or at AlphaGo, So playing computer game type AI, where you gave it the rules of a computer game and then it played against itself and then it beat humans. And we've seen it kind of playing arbitrary games, Atari games, SNES games, kind of everything. That kind of died down a little bit because no one really wants to get beaten by an AI all the time. It's kind of annoying, right? And again, the interfaces of this were slowed down. It wasn't like the computer being directly jacked into a video game. Like it had to like almost manually human-wise respond to things and things like that, right? And learn on the fly. It wasn't shown all the games of history, but it just got better and better and better. Then you had this deep learning phase where it was all about training these giant models on giant data. But again, we haven't optimized the data. And now it's about the recursive self-improvement. So we've seen recently a slew of things that can write academic papers. They do it by breaking it down, hypothesizing, testing, and having different models try different things. And again, that reflects normal society, normal teams, and more. So this is the next wave of recursive self-improving AIs, which should come next year, that self-correct their faults, that learn. And that is what gets us up to this 300 level. But most of the time, you don't want 300, Like, again, 100 to 110 is good enough.
I don't know that I agree with that, but why will recursive self-improvement stop at 300? I don't see why that has a natural stop.
Well, because you max out the score tests effectively. And again, what is intelligence? Like,
the ability to solve novel problems.
How many novel problems do you have to live?
Ooh, I mean, okay, so you and I might have to define terms here. So the thing that will make AI truly just world-shatteringly different, it is going to terraform the way that we live no matter what already, just the way that it's headed, much like the internet. But for it to really break free and have the shot at utopia or quite frankly dystopia, To me, it has to be able to have breakthroughs that humans have never had. So my current understanding of AI is it's just a pattern recognition machine, which means unless there is a pattern that is right in front of our faces that none of us have seen, it's not going to share human experiences by crawling the net, reading all of our books, watching us move about the world, and suddenly go, oh, you're missing this pattern. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Now, what it will be able to do, whether it can have breakthroughs or not, is take in a lot more data than we can, so it can see cancer 5 years early, simply because there is a complex confluence of things, but it's still just recognizing a pattern. For it to have a breakthrough on the order of Einstein, I don't know what that is. That strikes me as magical in a human. I wouldn't know what to even look for in an AI, but that feels very different. Like you're not going to get there from recursive self-improvement. So anyway, that when I talk about intelligence, I'm talking about that. There is, hey, we need to bend space-time so that we can travel to a distant star. That is a very novel problem. And we as humans have been unable to do that because we cannot understand the mathematics or maybe the substrate that we exist in. But there's some key thing that we're missing.
So, I mean, look, science builds upon previous things, and occasionally there's breakthroughs that happen simultaneously, right? Like, you have breakthroughs like information theory, you have breakthroughs in material sciences and more. I think if you kind of look at the ability of AI to synthesize and build, again, I just told you that we can make a poster of Barbie and Oppenheimer made by Paramount, and it'll be generated in a few seconds. And you don't even flinch, right? That doesn't exist in the data set. But that's a very
I'll
small...
argue that. I'll argue that. So, and I'm open to being convinced. I'm not trying to be a contrarian, but here's the reason that you can do a Barbie Oppenheimer poster is because they both have identifiable, explainable, what I'll call looks, which is simply a visual motif. That motif is simply a pattern. So these are all more fancy words for patterns. So Barbie has a pattern from color palette to angle choice to type of character, way they're posed, hairstyle, all of that. That's what makes her Barbie. And then same with Oppenheimer, right? So, and you could give me a Barbie Oppenheimer poster in the style of The Simpsons, because those all have an identifiable, what I'll call a mimicable style. This is why you can do an impression of somebody, because there are things that they do that when you repeat those patterns, the brain suddenly goes, oh, that's how Trump talks, right? That's why you can do an impression of Trump. So what I'm saying is, yeah, AI is always going to be able to do anything that I can break down into a pattern. And it's cool and it's amazing, but that is not how Einstein figured out his theories. They weren't pattern related.
Well, so this is where it is. Instinctively, I can't use that word, but inductively, like the AI can make Barbie Oppenheimer. And we just take it for granted now, right? And again, it's got patterns and it measures the patterns, it measures the styles. Recently, DeepMind released a paper on their new AI model that blind looked at International Math Olympiad papers. So this is the competition where the smartest mathematicians, university just before university, get together and solve these papers, and it's called a Silver, utilizing this agent-based self-recursive learning system. Because to solve these problems, they're really hard. You get easier. They're not the hardest problems in the world. But with actually not that much computation, it could solve these de novo problems that aren't in the dataset that require inductive reasoning. They require an understanding of the precepts of mathematics. And OpenAI has indicated that they have a goal. And one of the things here is the amount of compute that we put into solving these things is actually relatively minimal. We put in this much compute to training the models, but then we make the models consumer grade. So GPT-4 can pretty much run on a MacBook, a giant memory MacBook. Yeah, what if we created models and millions of agents that used as much energy as we used for that? The more energy you put into solving a problem, especially a new one, well, the more likely you are to solve it in some ways, especially if you can always remember every single try that you did and the different ways that you do it. Terence Tao is one of the best mathematicians of the generation. He's like super genius. He now uses AI every day as a partner to help him figure out new math.
Do
And so
you
when you have
know
people
how
like,
he's going about that? I'm very curious to know what he did to, like, surely he's not just working with GPT-4. Has he created a custom model? Is there something he had to do to it?
he is using GPT-4. He's just giving it all of his assumptions and using the context length and getting the feedback and trying and experimenting with new things, because there's no one that he can just talk to like that. But it can think through a few layers of this big picture stuff. But he's got his own capability. He just needs to have a sparring partner, right? But GPT-4, we've heard talk about this new thing, Q-Star or Strawberry from OpenAI, that has the agentic workflows. Everyone's building it. It will be able to remember, it will be able to improve, you'll be able to put as much compute budget as you want against solving a problem, just like you add manpower. But where we add manpower, what happens if you put a dozen scientists in a room? Nothing. Because they're all opinionated and they have egos and everything like that. None of these AIs have egos. And so the first step is this intuition, as it were, like, the Bobby Oppenheimer, as I call it, or this context shift, or this pattern matching. Then there's the inductive reasoning, the thinking slow. And when you start combining these, and again, you allow it to take time, there's a piece of software called Devin. So normally when you use GitHub Copilot, this code software, it does things instantly, right? Devin, you tell it to build an iPhone app, and it will go away for 7 hours or 8 hours and run dozens of these queries. And this is before agents, and start building it and checking all the different bits. Because, as an example, Bobby Oppenheimer, okay, now we just generate it, and it might work, it might not work. The future is go and make Bobby Oppenheimer, and it'll say, well, I kind of know what Tom likes and what the context of this is. Generate an image, check it for consistency, then check it for proofreading, check it for color palette optimization. There'll be an entire flow of knowledge. And again, this is where the future for getting to that super intelligent, or, this 300 IQ, will be needed for certain things where you're making new recipes and new breakthroughs. I think probably the main contention or the main difference in context from you and me is that I'm thinking a lot about the AI that will be used around the world. And there'll be some of these 300 IQ AIs, but the vast majority will be 110, 120. That's all we need, And again, there'll be execution machines. So again, I think that this is a required step to get there, because we've just modeled one part of the brain so far, and we have to combine it with all the other parts of the brain. And then we have to combine it with the smartest people in the world working together. Because the lone genius is one thing, but amazing teams are far more likely to get stuff done. And again, we can add infinite. Right? Technically now, there's no limit on the amount of context we can put into the context window of these models. Someone's figured that out. And there's no limit to the amount of energy we can put. Like, what if we just spent as much energy solving a particular, on faster than light travel as a GPT-4? Right now, you wouldn't get there, but maybe in 5-10 years you will, right? Fundamental nature of physics analyzed in depth in every single physics paper. And again, that kind of thing you said at the start.
All right, if we've got people that are using ChatGPT-4 or equivalent to do things like help them identify new math, it's far more complex than anything I've been able to use it for. That tells me I don't understand the context window well enough. What is the key to a really effective context window?
It's treating it like you would your assistant or your buddy that you're sparring with intellectually, right? It's giving the instructions and iterating and improving it. So, when you give instructions to the new person you hired, they have to understand the context of the thing they're doing, the way that you work. They learn about the feedback, and so you have to give it that feedback. But again, this is usually short context window stuff. Most people use ChatGPT or Anthropic, Claude, or Gemini with this very small amount of data. And again, you can give it 50,000 words or 1 million words of instructions. So again, like someone like Terence Tao, he uses it not for the breakthroughs. Why would I rely upon a graduate or new hire for a breakthrough? Right? I'm the experienced one with all the context and performing at the top of my game. I'm using it to offload thoughts and to have things bounce back, and it will follow my instructions to give it back. And maybe it will intuit some stuff. Maybe it will explore and kind of look at this in 5 different ways, right? And it's getting better and better at doing that. And we see that in the statistics of the performance of these models. Like Claude 3.5, the latest Anthropic model, is one of the first models I've actually enjoyed using since the very early days. So I think, I'll catch up. And now it's caught up. But again, I'm using it as a programming buddy. Better than any graduate programmer that I've worked with, you know? But before that, it was kind of crap. But this experience is not going to stop getting better. Particularly because it's almost too cheap now. So rather than having, again, you might used to cost $150 for 1 million words, and now it costs 15 cents. But those million words have got from 80 IQ to over to 100 now.
Oh, the irony. Emad, it is so fun to bounce these ideas back and forth with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can follow the Twitter at Emad Mostaque or at Schelling Ai. That's what we love.
I love it. All right, everybody, as the Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. And you certainly live in interesting times. All right, speaking of interesting, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Peace. If you like this conversation, check out this episode to learn more.
We have 2 futures in our world today, either a Mad Max future or a Star Trek future.
Do you think that as we transition over to AI, that it will take us through a valley of despair, or is this going to be a straight line to utopia?
Oh no, big valleys of chaotic despair.